Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 197B, Raging Oscars 2009, part 1. I'm Sean Lynn, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Sean, that may be the longest title for an episode that we've ever had. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
I didn't know what to expect. It was funny when a lot of times we record, Jim and I will start by recording the opening and then just kind of go into having our discussions, and other times we'll do it this way. I deliberately waited on this one because I had no idea. I had, 13 pages, you had 15 pages, you had some space between yours, I had all bunched together. I knew between the two of us we had a meaty discussion here. I completely went back through based on some of your comments as we were having some phone conversations about this and reworked some of my notes. We've got a meaty discussion where we start talking about almost every book published in 2009.
We came pretty close.
We break down to a lot of top threes and top fives, but we also talk about notable issues throughout each of the titles, because that was something I wanted to do. I wanted this to be a celebration of what was great. Each book had 12 issues in most cases, and I wanted to really talk about what was cool about this year. So we're actually going to we're going to come back a little bit later in the week to wrap this up with part 2. A lot to discuss for 2009. It was a great year. I had fun with this discussion.
Yes.
This was, just to me, one of the better episodes that we've done of Raging Oscars, because this is, our third time doing this, I think? I think it's our third time, because our fourth year is our third time.
Fourth year's coming up, yeah.
Yeah, so this was, to me, we put a lot more planning into this one than any other year we've ever done this one, and I'm hoping you guys really enjoy this one. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. At DCBService.com, you can pre-order a really awesome trade. Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam. Mike Kunkel, Art Baltazar, Franco, art by Mike Kunkel, Stephen DeStefano, and others. The magic word Shazam transforms Billy Batson into Captain Marvel, but now there's a new kid at school, 14-year-old Theo Adam, who has his own alter ego as Black Adam, collecting issues 1 through 6 of this acclaimed all-ages series. This is really a cool price. It's regularly $12.99, 50% off, only $6.49. I cannot recommend this enough. If you aren't picking up this series, the amount of sheer content in this is just outstanding. If you're a fan of Tiny Titans, this is a very different series from that. And it's got just as much joy and excitement and all that too. And just great, accessible superhero storytelling with its own continuity and own storyline. This is coming out of the Jeff Smith miniseries, but it's really got a flavor of its own. You can pick this up right out of the starting gate and just enjoy it. And this is something, pick up a copy for you. I'm picking up one for my classroom because I've got all the singles myself, and I'm picking up one for my students. This has got the highest possible recommendation for me, so please pick it up if you haven't already. That's from DCBService.com, Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam trade paperback. Our road to 200 continues, and episode 199 is going to be the JLA Avengers trade paperback. This once-in-a-lifetime crossover that brought two super teams together and rocked the comics world is at last available in trade paperback. Own the entire 4-issue co-publishing event between DC and Marvel, and written by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. And this collection features an introduction by Avengers writer-editor Stan Lee and Justice League of America editor Julius Schwartz. Regularly $19.99, 47% off, only $10.59. That's 208 pages of DC and Marvel goodness, and we're going to be getting to that really, really soon. Especially now that on this episode we're getting past our Raging Oscars, we're getting to the point where we're ready to start recording Preacher and then this one. So we're getting there. I want to thank InStockTrades.com for continuing to support those great contests, and we're really appreciating that. So thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for your continued sponsorship of the show. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. You can also hear us on Get Your Geek on Radio, GetYourGeekOnRadio.com, an online radio station committed to making geek chic. Want to remind everyone about the Hero Initiative. That's heroinitiative.org. And for more info, there's a handy-dandy link on ragingbullets.com where you can make your own donations. And I do encourage you to do that. Hero Initiative is just a wonderful program. I joined. I've got a silver membership myself, and I encourage you to consider joining because I just think it's a really, really cool program to be a part of. And that's the Hero Initiative, so very, very cool. check out ragingbullets.com. I'm continuing to update the site. I'm reworking it right now. It's a work in progress, and I'm hoping you guys are liking the new look. It's a work in progress. I actually have one of our listeners, and I'll announce more about this later, who is helping us out with reworking a design template, which is going to be a lot of fun on that site. But hopefully you're liking the new look and the new direction of it, and hopefully it'll be very cool. I want to shout out David Barron's contest. That's myzombies.blogspot.com or twitter.com/myzombies. His new contest is very, very cool. It's the Batman King Tut's Tomb trade paperback. And here's how the contest works. You can get this one. You must follow him on Twitter. That's twitter.com/myzombies. You've got to retweet the following: I love Batman. And the winner will be announced on February 17th, 2010, which is Comic Book Day. So make sure to please be retweeting that and getting the word out about David Barron's blog. And you're going to get an extra entry for following this blog as well. So if you do both, 2 entries into the contest, but very, very cool. I put a link right on ragingbullets.com. You'll see David Barron's contest. You can get to his blog, his Twitter, and, of course, direct to these contest rules. So you don't need to write anything down right now. Just go to our website and get it. And it's just a great chance for yourself to get a great contest prize just for retweeting and for following a blog. Very, very cool. And thank you, David Barron, for being a co-sponsor of that contest with our show. And we really appreciate your support of us. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets, DC Spoiler Podcast. Raging Bullets, we go in depth in the books, you know. We go in depth in plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the books we're reviewing on the show. So if you haven't read them, come back later, you know. So you can better enjoy the show. We are the Raging Bullets, DC Spoiler Podcast. Raging Bullets, we go in depth in the books, you know.
You had quite the week, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Little bit of tribute to Jesus Christ Superstar.
I saw the clouds opening up and lightning ready to hit you. Yeah, it was.
You kidding?
Yeah.
That's honoring.
You gonna do the whiz next? Yeah. That'll be my request. Yeah. Do we do requests?
A lot of people have thrown out requests. We'll see what happens.
That's good. That'll be interesting to see.
This goes on.
Without further ado, let's jump into the Raging Oscars, part 1 of 2. Can you imagine that we were going to do? Like, we almost got 3 hours off of this recording, and we got another part.
Now I can get out of here.
Jim, the Raging Oscars. We're finally here for this one. What in the world were we thinking, and why did I listen to you?
You need the fanfare going.
That's wonderful. You're very musical.
Yes.
I never knew you to be so musical. I hate you. And I'll tell you why I hate you. We were having a discussion where you were like, dude, is this episode going to be interesting enough? We're going to have enough that's unique and all that other stuff. And you came up with some crazy idea about doing all of the titles and looking ahead for all the titles, which I thought was interesting, something to do further on down the road. But then I started going back and I completely redid and threw out everything that I had done before. And what I did for my categories were, I went solo, team book, limited series, and did my favorite titles. Then what I did was, in those favorite titles, I did my favorite issue. Then I'm like, well, he made an interesting point because we always talk about how we're enjoying all these books. So why don't I try to pick out my favorite issue from almost every title? I've got like 13 pages with comments on over 60 books. And, I mean, we're going to go through and really talk about over this year pretty much everything, but favorite issues and favorite moments from 2009. This was nuts.
Yes.
I went down the basement where all my comics are. I spent hours down there, days down there. I was like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm cursing Jim's name, but this is actually a lot of fun. It was fun, because it was weird to look back at 2009 and see, in some titles, there was things that I found that was interesting earlier. In other titles, it was the build and the payoff at the end of the year, because a lot of them ended in a great payoff. that I liked. Some titles, I couldn't pick out an individual issue, but I talk about a theme that was in the book that was really, so it was interesting. But for most of the titles that I picked, I was able to grab individual issues or arcs that stood out for me. So this is going to be an interesting discussion to talk about 2009. What did you do?
And one of the most funny thing I'm enjoying more now is the fact that when I suggested that, you're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I like where you're going with it, but let's just stick with the traditional format and we're going to go with. So that's what I did. I just stuck with a more traditional Raging Oscars.
Well, this isn't
format.
What you suggested either.
Yeah, this is a modification of it.
Right.
So this is a mutation, if you will, of the idea I had. But yeah, I went more traditional format, Raging Oscars, and it's weird because I didn't do exactly what we did last year. I kind of shifted some stuff around. I started thinking, instead of just doing, like you have the Oscars have the categories, and last year we did categories with solo, team, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I took dynamics, not you have a team dynamic. But, for example, and also like inner character, individual character development type theme. So, for example, Secret Six is a team book, but I looked at the inner character development of the team.
This is so funny. Remember how I said we were going to be so unique if we just wound up making our own categories and doing that? My first set of notes, that's what I was doing.
Nice.
Yeah. So it is. I'm glad actually that I went in a different direction because you and I. It's funny how in sync we've become.
And it was as I said, like with Wonder Woman's a solo book, but it's always her team dynamics that impresses. And also the other category I did go with was family. And I'm not just talking the Bat family, Super family. Looking at JSA family, Titans family, various families, and that family type dynamic. Is what I did. And then I did something very similar on the art side where with art, with me, I am a fan of the writing. That is really what pulls me in. Now, a good art team working with a good writer makes things just really wonderful for me. But I do think, writing first, art second. So part of that weakness I have in that is I really couldn't pick out an individual saying the penciler here, the inker here. So I looked at art teams that covered different types of categories. So with me, there's not one solo artist or thing that I'm going with, but there is art teams. And I did similar type of dynamics where dealing with action sequences, dealing with individual sequences. And then the third category I really did was background detail, attention to detail, because a lot of times we talk about that with our attention to detail. Oh, look at that that's cool. So that's one of my categories within my Raging Oscars. And I have a couple other individual writing, and I actually went through editorial team. I got doing an Oscar for the editorial team. This year I have a couple that I started noticing when we were talking that when we go through the listing of the creative team, we always mention the editor, and I started noticing there were specific teams, editorial teams, that I was like, they're on a lot of books that I'm really liking. It can't be a coincidence that this editorial team is doing so well with these books under this editorial team is doing so well. So there's got to be something there. So I actually have some editorial comments as well, and some other various whatnot categories.
What I did is I broke it down by solo, team books, limited series, and one-shots. Because I figured the one-shot category was something. There were a lot of those one-shot style issues that came out. Not just one-shots. I put annuals in that category as well, and 80-page giants. Thematically, I talk about those there. And then I did a small little blurb about things outside of the regular traditional DC universe. Stuff that fits into Johnny DC, Vertigo, that kind of thing. Just some books that I wanted to note that I really enjoyed in 2009. So I thought that'd be kind of an interesting way to go. Do you want to just kind of trade categories? We'll each do a category off of our list, and kind of we can play off each other that way. You want to kind of just do it that way?
We can start off.
Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Sure. I'll start, and I'll start with my writing category.
Okay.
And I did look at limited series and monthly series separately. And, last year...
As far as writers?
As far as writers and art team.
Okay.
So I did break that down separately. So there's going to be some... first up is obviously the monthly series. Mm-hmm. And the first category, it's writing for a team dynamic. Now, it's funny, I did mention, as I was giving examples of solo books that could be team books, and I mentioned Wonder Woman, and obviously, she's going to be in my top, my top 3. And I had some really just great hoorah moments, seeing her deal with the Amazonian code and her honor code with the gorillas and all the various people that she's, dealt with, and had, it was that whole inspiration that she brings out in people, and just, especially the whole circle story going on, and then just everything that has gone through. That was something that really just had me.
I love that that's built since Gail Simone's initial arc of the Circle, that's just something that's carried on through, and that there's nothing that she's done that's been throwaway.
Yeah.
Every little element, even stories that don't directly tie into what happened with Achilles and all that, and the Circle, they taught us something about Diana that is playing into this.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very cool how all that, through genocide, and even her space adventures and that fantasy story, all of those elements do come together to where this series wrapped up at the end of this year. And that was a kind of a neat thing for me, a way to crescendo. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm completely co-signing what you're saying here, because, it is that, she, as I said, she's the solo title that has this great team dynamics. Now, she didn't win the Oscar, because I have 2 other titles that, as amazing as Wonder Woman was, as amazing a team book as it was a solo title. So it didn't have as strong a team dynamics as the next 2. But it's even, I can't even say not as strong as, because really, when I got to this point, I kept changing which was going to be my winner multiple times.
So I'm trying to understand your categories.
Silver.
Do you have books that appear in multiple categories?
Maybe.
Okay. Trying to understand your...
Yeah.
It's the way your mind's working.
The way it is remember, it's team dynamics.
So very similar to like the regular Oscars.
Wonder Woman can have a individual dynamic, can have a team dynamic, and can have a family dynamic. Mm-hmm. So I'll just throw that out there. You can have.
Were there any books that had a musical dynamic? Sorry, just playing off of the way your mind works.
Well, it's funny you mention that.
Oh, good Lord.
You know how I said I had some whatnot categories?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the whatnot categories I did have was issue/series that should be made into a musical.
Okay.
Now the inspiration for this was obviously the...
Do you want to go back to the solo books and finish those?
Oh, no, we're going to finish this. We're going... You started it. We're going off on a tangent, brother.
Me and my big mouth.
Yep. The inspiration for this was a couplefold. One, that great Brave and the Bold with the music maestro, that Brave and the Bold episode, that musical episode they had.
Oh, you went actually outside of the alternative media.
That was my inspiration.
Oh, the inspiration. Ones that should be made into a musical like that.
Right.
That was a great episode of that cartoon.
Oh God, yeah. And I've watched it multiple times. I howl every single time. I was like, damn, this is hysterical.
Do you think that cartoon? Do you read the comic?
I stopped reading. I got the first couple issues of the comic, then I stopped reading it.
It's gotten better.
Yeah.
The comic actually is really in tune with the cartoon's gotten better. Yeah. It's funny, the comic has mirrored that. As it's gone on, it's gotten better too, just like the cartoon. It's a very cool, accessible, fun book. And it was one I was considering dropping, and I'm totally into it now for just that reason. It's actually one of the ones that's on my... I'll just brush over it quickly when I get to it.
Yeah.
But that is one of the ones on my outside of the DC universe that is a book that I really enjoyed this year, and it surprised me how much I got into it.
Okay.
So there was another Johnny DC title that's... it's a great, fun, everybody read. It's a good one to read with kids, good one to... read with families. It's just and good read yourself. I have a great time with that book. I look forward to it. It's a breather. It's kind of our getaway from. So.
And I'm not going to be distracted. I still am on my musical theme.
I'm not trying to distract you. You just got done talking about the music maestro. So
now, when I started thinking about it, a couple stuff did pop up. First up, I was thinking, Superman Secret Origin would be a great kind of musical thing. The visuals and all that would be awesome. But there is a musical of Superman. So I'm like, it's already out there. I wouldn't want to, kind of rip off somebody else's deal.
And I've got to say, I love Secret Origin. I don't want to see that at all.
Now, the other thing I was thinking would be would be Battle for the Cowl. you have the whole dynamics of the two, of Dick and Tim and Damien. Bum, 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 bum,
I am Batman, I am Batman, I am Batman.
It's my destiny, kind of stuff. And I was like, that'd be kind of neat. Exactly. But the thing that really...
In a sick way that works.
Yeah, well, the thing that got me, the reason
And it
that...
is sick.
Well, the reason that didn't win was because as I was rereading Battle for the Cowl...
Black Mask has freed us!
They didn't have a lot of the dialogue that I could directly turn into musical. And it was like, I could do, you need to do a little modification.
You have to put a little work in, Jim, to adapt.
Hold on. I came across a title that I had to do very little modification to, and that is the winner, my Raging Oscar. Now,
Wait, can I ask you a question
Okay.
before you actually tell us your winner? How much time did you spend on that category?
Oh, a little bit. A little bit.
Okay.
Okay, now, the winner is, it's actually, I was able to pick a specific issue that, could be, but
Could be a musical.
That could be in a musical, but the whole series itself, there's multiple times when I found, this would be a neat one, this would be a neat one. So there is a specific issue, and that is Secret Six, number 13. This is the one where they're on the island, they're breaking out the people. As specifically, if you think about the scene where Scandal is confronting the guards, as they're getting ready to free the Amazons. Okay?
Yeah.
So now, if you will, the stage, it's got a nice dual setup. You got Scandal over on the one side, the guards sitting there, and please remember, this should be sung by a female, not by me. Just 30 seconds, you guards of slaves. Just 30 seconds do you rot in your graves. Maybe enough time to call a loved one, maybe enough time to pray, but not both. Then as it shifts, you'll see this kind of like shifting over from the one side to the other as we see the young Scandal, waking up from her birthday, getting ready, and it's, when I was just a child, having just turned 9 years old, my father told me it was time to put away childish things. Your mother is in terrible danger, and only you may save her. If you run this gauntlet I've assembled, then she lives. And then, Scandal, the little baby Scandal, of course, jumps into battle. We know how it ends. She does not win.
Did you get people to act this out with you at home?
No, I was acting out myself.
Because I'm like watching you within the energy behind this. I'm like, you've done this before. Yeah. This was not something you just did here.
Oh, no. Okay, so of course, obviously, she fails.
Right,
and then,
of course.
Scandal goes down with his fatherly advice. You failed because you thought your enemies as obstacles to run from and avoid. Your enemies are not obstacles, but vermin to be crushed, disemboweled, and mutilated, and their families to be killed to the last mewing child. You're shorter than they are. I suggest aiming for their crotch and bellies twisting after each puncture. And then of course it shifts back. You see little baby Scandal gets gets her claws, and then she passes them on to the adult Scandal, and then we go once again back to the main chorus of the title as Scandal is dealing with the villains. Once again, the just 30 seconds, you guards of slaves. Just 30 seconds, you rot in your graves. Yes, I kept practicing, and it was. So
did you sing this out loud at home?
Oh yes, I sang it out loud, and
your parents come upstairs and wonder
I had the door
who you
closed.
were killing? Or?
I had the door closed. Come on, I'm not an idiot. I know,
But okay, this door's closed right now. I guarantee you, my wife's hearing this.
Well, they tend to learn to just ignore when weird stuff like that's going on. And it was funny. I started thinking of other songs that could be done, like that whole Catman and Deadshot, that one scene where they were going into the grocery store dealing with the grocery. That whole thing played out beautifully in a musical. I'm not going to sing that one because I didn't completely have it down, but it was just, the layout was awesome.
Where's your dedication?
Yeah. But I also had a funny bit that I was working on, but it's kind of hard to do because we do try to keep this kind of clean. If you think about Pinocchio's "I've got no strings to hold me up," well, imagine what Ragdoll's singing. I've got no. So I was kind of thinking that kind of
commentary
stuff.
on his dowry.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The scary part is, I have to admit, it works.
Yeah. To be honest, there are multiple stuff, and it just it's
as terrified
writing.
As I am right now.
The writing
it works.
has a great little banter going on with it. there was a couple other ones that were doing pretty good, but I was like, I'm going with the 6 because that was just I don't know. I was easily able to create songs just from reading the titles and all that stuff.
I feel dirty right now, but it actually does work.
Some of the junior stuff, some of the junior torturing, the torturing of Bane when he's throwing bricks. But okay, let me continue on to where I was talking about team dynamics, the writing for Team Dynamic. My number 2 spot went to Justice Society of America. It's funny because it's described as a family, not a team, and this and that, but it is really some great team dynamics in the writing and just how they interplay and they operate off of each other, and one's strength is another's weakness, and they cover, and it was that great kind of flow through. Now, I do want to make sure people realize that I did not include All-Stars in with this year's, when I'm talking Oscars, because I consider that more of a 2010 book. So with my consideration, it's really not, All-Stars not in the play. If it was, then it would be JSA.
Why do you consider it a 2010 book, even though it came out in 2009?
It only really had, the 1 issue, 2 issues. And I was like, and you look at it.
Which is funny, because I was looking at individual issues that fit very much for what I was doing.
See, and it's really 1, 2 issues, like, you know what? I could throw that, but it's just fresh there. I'm like, I think I'm going to, hold off on that.
Okay.
And it's just a personal choice. It's going to be...
No, it's fine. I was just curious.
But I wanted to make sure people realize that, because that would,
I wanted to know, because I'm enjoying following your category.
Yeah, it's, with me, it's really... And, it's funny, because with the 2 together, it's, they would have probably have gotten together and lumped together, and, and I say I'm doing 3, but it's really, a lot of times, I look at titles together, especially if it's...
I did. I actually, when I get to team books, I did actually put those 2 books together, because my enjoyment came off of how well they complemented each other.
Yeah. Now, my winner, of course, is it's going to the Green Lantern Corps and Green Lantern. It's you're going to hear.
Are you putting them together?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a very hard time separating the 2 of them, just because they work so well together, and their story they're telling is one. They're separate stories, but they are connected, and it is, it's the Green Lantern Corps is the strength of it. And Green Lantern Hal Jordan is part of the Green Lantern Corps in my eyes. He's got his own title, and he has his own issues he's dealing with in
But
Green
even
Lantern,
the creators work so well together to try and craft a larger feel story. So I would agree with...
And this is something I've always thought of, these 2 together this way. So it's something I really...
How do you feel about the 3rd book?
I'm excited for the 3rd book.
Tomasi launching a 3rd book, and Tony Bedard from Rebels taking over Green Lantern Corps.
I really enjoy Tony Bedard's writing, so I'm like, okay, I think he'll do a great job with Green Lantern Corps. Tomasi, I'm loving Tomasi's writing. Mm-hmm. That was, one of the things I was like, I'm like, this is going to be really some awesome stuff here, and I'm looking forward to what I've been following the source more and seeing who some of the cast of characters are going to be, and I'm like, ooh, that should be interesting. So
it was funny. I didn't think they'd go the route of a 3rd Green Lantern book, and I'm so glad they did.
Yeah, and it's this was the pre-Blackest Night decision, going through Blackest Night, just everything that happened through 2009, the Green Lantern Corps just always maintained a solid team dynamic for me. And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, this is, my number 1 team book, with regards to writing. You want me to continue with the writings, or go on, or you go to your next?
I want to go ahead and do my solo category. What I did was, when I was going through this, I put in for my solo books a top 5 list of my favorite solo books. After my top 5, what I did was, for a majority of the solo titles that were put out by DC, I tried to go in within that title and pick out a single issue or moment that was my favorite, to kind of address those books and just kind of share with people my feelings on them. Starting at number 5, Red Robin number 7. I chose this one because, and it was a tough one, because I was leaning towards that cave discovery issue where he finally got vindication that, like, oh my gosh, Bruce is alive. But this was the one with Tam Fox. He came back for me. The real fear from him that she could die and that he would be responsible. This added to the intensity of the villains. There was a true sense of danger, which is hard to achieve when deep down you know both characters are going to survive, because I didn't have any doubt that they were, but yet I felt like there was danger there, even though I knew neither of them was going to die. Chris Yost, Marcus Tu, Dexter Vines, Guy Major, Sal Cipriano. Just kudos on this one. I actually care about Tam Fox, and I want to see this relationship develop. Number 4, Detective Comics 859. The whole origin story worked for me, but this one is where we get to see Kate ultimately choose to be true to herself. She chose honor over the opportunity to hide her secret. I love this book for that. She has her own sense of code. She makes mistakes, yet she keeps trying. The Gotham universe is a hard one, and choosing to make a difference there takes a special person. We talked about this issue at length on the show, and it's because it's very much a standout piece. I'm sad that she didn't stay the main feature of Detective Comics, because I liked her with the question. I just think it was working. On the flip side, I'm thrilled that we're getting our own series. So, I mean, it's a win-win. Great art, fantastic story with a unique character that adds something to the DC universe. Similar to the Superman family, I'm enjoying what the expanded Batman family is bringing to the table, and this was one for me. It just bumped it right up. So that's my number 4 solo title of the year, but that specific issue is the one that won it out. Jonah Hex was a little bit different. That's my number 3. The Six Gun War, 44 to 49, Tallulah Black, Batlash, El Diablo. Guest star in this major epic pitting Hex against El Papagayo. What I like about this is Hex has different relationships with each member of his comrades, and I use that loosely. Some like him, some hate him, some wonder why they even associate with him. They have moral disagreements, yet circumstance throws them together, and their common bond is that together they are willing to stand in the face of impossible odds versus letting fate overtake them. You know, they could just hide in a corner or something like that. There are points where each member is genuinely in danger or severely hurt, and you wonder how they are going to carry on. This is especially true of Hex. If you miss this, I don't want to give away the end result, but this story is pretty large in Hex history, and it's definitely a grab and trade. It's a whole 6-issue art. It's a great one. You don't have to have read anything beforehand. It feeds you everything you need. It's Gray and Palmiotti and the whole creative team just really delivered a home run. Beautiful, edgy, sharp Western.
I tell you, that was in one of the runnings for a musical.
The Six Gun War?
No.
I was going to say.
Actually, it wasn't.
It actually, you know what? I got to be honest with you, it would work.
It was, though. I was like looking at it going, man, this could be a movie.
Did you read all of the Six Gun War?
Yeah. I ended up picking up the issues, and I'm like, okay.
Wasn't it good?
Yes. Oh, yes.
And the whole relationship with Tallulah Black, and just, you know, I really love this book. Hex is just wonderful. That's my number 3 book of the year. It just really was up there, and I'm like, you know, there was not an issue of Jonah Hex I didn't like this year, but this arc in particular stood out for me. And I couldn't pick one issue because it was the arc as a whole. It felt like a epic film.
Yeah.
So, like Unforgiven.
Yeah.
My number 2 book, Wonder Woman. I did not have a favorite issue of Wonder Woman, and let me clarify this. This book delivered every month, and each issue was essential to that build. We talked about this book quite a bit in 2009, and that was no accident. I love the development of Achilles, who I thought would become Diana's main adversary, only to learn that he was being used by Alcyon. He gradually grows to respect Diana, and we see some great moments from him. Diana shows us the power of love, friendship, sacrifice, all for the greater good. The year wrapped up the storyline in a fantastic way where even Zeus learned from her, and it was satisfying because of the fantastic build. We got to see all of the Amazons. We got to see Hippolyta. We got to see Steve Trevor come back and Etta Candy in a way that just made sense. We got to see the gorillas, and the whole year just worked for me. And it really was, I could not pick a single issue because to me it was this build to a crescendo. So that was my number 2 book. My number 1, Batman and Robin number 1. The first issue made me feel like a kid again. It dropped us right into the action with some stunning art. The new Batmobile, the relationship between Dick and Damian, Morrison, Quitely, this crew really nailed it, but I remember seeing that Batmobile flying along and this whole Mr. Pig storyline kicking off, and I was just kind of like, what are they doing? It's cool. I expected to enjoy Dick Grayson as Batman. This issue right out of the starting gate made me a believer. I wanted to be in that Batmobile. It made me feel like when I watched the 60s show as a kid, which is hard to make you feel that way again, because when I was a kid growing up, the 60s show, I didn't know it was a spoof. I wanted to be Robin. I wanted to be there in the Batmobile. This issue made me feel like that again, because darn, that floating Batmobile is so cool. I'm in. And it just made me a believer that the dynamic, the reversal between the two, with the way that Damian is kind of like the hard to get along with one, and Dick Grayson being the accessible Batman. It just worked. It just all worked for me. So that first issue was one that in the Quitely art, just really, I gotta say, that artwork just really was stunning to me. So that was my number one solo book. Yeah. I don't know if you want to go back to one of your categories, and then we'll go back, because what I did was in this same solo category, I have, and we can do it right after your next category.
Cool. And, well, it's actually good leading, because my next category is writing for individual character development. Uh-huh. And it's, it's looking at, this is the breakdown of the looking at the individual, whether throughout the year that's, tested the character, you've, just develop it. It's hard to say develop, because there's a lot of characters in here who already are heroes, but they've gone through it's not just gone through adversity, they've gone through just a personal growth. And it was something, just the way the individual character was handled was something I was really wow. And this was the category that I had a hard time giving a top 3, coming up with a top 4. I had, it ends up being a top 4, to be honest with you, because I couldn't, my top third had its number 3 spot locked until at the end of the year, and I'm like, I'm not going to bump this this person out just because something came in and just snuck in on the wire. So my number 4 spot goes to Supergirl. She's a character that, they started, getting me into her really strongly in 2008. It built on through 2009. I'm looking forward to not only, what's going to happen in the Superman family, in the Superman universe, but I'm going to look at I'm curious to see how she has to deal with it, how she dealt with it. Had some great story arcs between her and Cat Grant, the whole Superwoman story, everything that happened there, her dealings with the world of New Krypton, my really just love of the character started back in that cancer issue, continued on growing. Then we had that great, Guild Day issue that
issue number 43.
Yeah. Oh God, I loved it.
That's my favorite issue of Supergirl this year.
I kind of guess that was, but it was just one of those things where this character has consistently continued to grow and develop, and it's she is a solid hero on her own rights, but there's still so much more of the character that they're fleshing out and they're showing us as she's part of this super universe. She's wearing the big red S with pride and with conviction, and that's just something. I'm a Superman guy, and I want to see anybody who represents Superman have that type of strength to them. It's one of the things I dig about Mon-El, that now he's like, hey, I got to represent, and he's got the logo on his uniform now, and it's he's standing up for something more than just him. He's standing up and he's representing Superman. It's just I really was getting into that, just her dealing with that. It's not just your regular superhero coming of their own. She already is of her own, but she knows you always have to keep getting better. You always have to keep getting stronger. Now, the title that bumped her out of the number 3 spot, and it's the exact same reason she made your spot, and that is Detective Comics with the Batwoman. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't even just the origin story, and you talked about that great stuff with just her. They showed her military discipline and just who she is. It was about just the growth of the character. It's kind of hard because when you're a brand new character, it's easy to do a character growth, but the way they played her out, it was, they started off with the action. They started off with that great, great opening story, and they really didn't go into who is Batwoman. Made you think and made you wonder what's going on.
I'm glad they waited.
And it was a perfect just layout. And I was like, bam, this is how you do it. You give us some action, you give us some cool looking, artwork, you get us hooked into the character, and then you start telling the backstory. And just this backstory of this character was somebody that I would want as a hero, someone that I would want representing the city. She's completely different from Batman as to why she does it, but she still has that same call. She still has that same call of duty, that same need to, she's not a hero for thrills, she's not a hero for adventure, she's doing it to do the right thing, and that is the heart, the code of the Bat. And that was just something that really just rang true to me with this character. I'm so glad she's getting her own series. I hope it continues to do well. And this is something, someone we see more of. I really would like to see her interacting with other characters. I would love to see her and Wonder Woman interacting. Because both those characters, it would be a great, just, a wow kind of moment.
I'd like to see her. There's a lot of characters I'd like to see
yeah.
her with. Ultimately, I'd like to see her in Supergirl because I just think that would be a crazy dynamic. Who I'd really like to see her with? Her and Black Canary.
Yeah, that'd be another good one.
Interesting one to talk about.
Definitely two really strong.
Her and Huntress.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of seen that.
We've seen that, yeah. But it's still my number 2 spot. It goes to the Batman title. Dick Grayson, just his process of him becoming the Bat, and it has been just one of those things where I was just like, yes, this is I am very happy with who is Batman right now. When Bruce comes back, I don't want to see Dick give up the cowl. I like him as Batman. I like his style. I like what's going on. The whole story arc we had with Winnick, then right into Tony Daniels, his story, just everything flowing through. You see this character, get comfortable in a very uncomfortable situation. He's taking over for the man who, trained him, who raised him, who, was his mentor, his friend, his father, his adversary. They had, the moments that they had those, butting heads between each other. Just that, that family relationship. And he's stepping into the boots and he's filling in the cowl. And that's, the weight of that on him. But he still maintains who he is. He still is Dick Grayson underneath that, under the cowl. And it was that, blending of Batman and Grayson that was something I was like, wow, this is something kind of cool. But here's the funny thing is that's my number 2. That didn't win the Oscar, and my Oscar goes to Secret Six. With Gail Simone's writing, it's, as I said in the beginning, it's dynamics, and the strength of Secret Six for me is 6 individuals who are coming together as a team. And throughout these issues, throughout this year, we have gotten these individual developments of characters. One, we get the return of Bane. We are now seeing, once again, the man who broke the bat, broke the back of the bat. This is Bane, and there's even not just everything completely still. There's still more to tell. What's going to happen? What's going on with him in Scandal? What's going on with him in his own mindset? Sometimes when he's got to pop that venom, will he be able to come back when he does it? Because there's going to be more times he's going to have to do it. We got Jeanette, a brand new character introduced in a team book, and it's still fleshed out beautifully, but it wasn't a complete flesh out. There's still more mysteries about her. There's still more stuff to learn. And, of course, Deadshot. I was like, Deadshot was a character that, you kind of look at him and think, oh, okay, yeah, he's a shooter, he's a killer, okay, yeah. But there's so much more to this character, and we're seeing that, throughout, recent issues, throughout the fleshing out past, those great dialogues between him and Catman, have really kind of, let you get into the mindset of who and what Deadshot is. Those Amazon issues where he was ready to throw down with his teammate, because of the code. He's got, hey, we got a reputation to protect. We got to do our job, what we were paid to do. And it was just that neat stuff. Then, of course, Catman, just the struggle between the hero and the villain in him. He wants to be a hero, but he knows who he is. And it's one of those, it's that conflict in him that you see. And, I want to see him do the dun-da-da, hero up, but he is a villain. He is a killer. He talked some guy through how to, slaughter and, torture to death the one serial killer guy.
If every hero in the DC universe did dun-da-da that you want to see do dun-da-dun, people would be telling him, will they please stop?
Well, my 2 probably favorite characters, though, are, of course, Ragdoll. Because you always just have wonderful moments from him. And it's, as you start to understand him, I get scared. Because I don't know if I really want to understand the mindset of Ragdoll. Because there's just, there's levels of just depravity that we have not gotten to. And part of me wants to see it. Part of me doesn't want to see it. I eagerly anticipate every time that there's going to be something with him, because he throws out the cool little one-liners, but he also throws out little bits about his character. And I'm waiting for the big Ragdoll issue where we get just really some fleshed out details in the mind of Ragdoll. That I'm kind of like I want to and I don't, because I'm kind of scared what we're going to get. But Scandal for me has just been the save. She is just, bam, it. I could do a Scandal solo title. and just love it just because of who she is. When Knockout died, I was so terrified that, she would slip into a funk, but she didn't. She knuckled up. Yeah, she had a couple periods where she was getting drunk, and, her friends bring in the wonderful little stripper dressed up like Knockout, which I was like, I saw that scene come on, like, oh God, no, please don't gut this young lady. And she, of course, didn't. And just as everything is going through with Bane taking over the team, but she's still there, she's still in the presence, and just everything that's going on with her has been one of those things like, yes, yes, yes. And it's, heck, I did a musical about her, come on, it's, you can't get much more than that. It was just like, wow. So that is for individual.
You know what I'm going to do? Why don't I save my best of the rest for the end, after we kind of do our best of the best? And why don't I go to team books?
Oh, okay.
So I'll do my top 5 team books. Does that make sense? We kind of like, then we can have a casual discussion going through about the other books. For number 5, this is going to probably shock you, Doom Patrol Metal Men number 3. This issue completely sold me on this series, especially the handling of Rita and how her ex-husband manipulated her during their marriage. Calder knew of this and violated Rita anyway to accomplish the goals. It shows how relentless he can be. The black hole, totally wacky concept that showed that Doom's Patrol's cases aren't like any other team's. There just was terror and a creep factor to it. I loved the Metal Men co-feature, but it was the main Doom Patrol feature that really grabbed me on this issue and bumped it up into that slot. So that's Doom Patrol number 3. Number 4. Because I was choosing individual issues, I went with, it's a tie on this one, JSA All-Stars number 1 and Justice Society of America number 34. This is right after the split has occurred. It was great to see both of those issues come out that month and to get an idea that we're going to have the Legacy book with the Justice Society of America book and JSA All-Stars. And it's funny, the more I've reread these books, I don't think we've seen everything we're going to see yet from the All-Stars. It's funny how when that's... I don't think what we've seen with the All-Stars yet is so cut and dry. I think the turmoil between Power Girl and Magog is going to lead to a very tried and true Justice Society of America team. I am so into that book with every issue, but it was number 1 when it kicked off, and seeing that mirrored with the other Justice Society of America book, it really sold me on this split concept is going to work. That was the time where I'm like, okay, these new creative teams are working for me. The books are both gorgeous. They look very different. I love the co-feature aspect, which ended up kicking in later in that book. But it is something I'm really digging about. I'm back into the whole universe. Number 3 for me, Justice Society of America number 26. Last issue with Jeff Johns, Dale Eaglesham, just the whole creative team wrapped up in a great story that revolved around a party for Stargirl, personal fun, felt like friends hanging out. It was a fun issue, but a hard issue. It's hard to see such a fantastic creative team leave your favorite book. That's why I'm glad that my slot underneath it is the new creative team, who's finally gelling and coming to their own, and really they've developed their storyline to the point where it makes me believe that they understand what makes the Justice Society of America cool, because it's so hard to follow this Death Star of a creative team that was on it, that wrapped up with issue 26, which to me this year was stellar. Number 2 for me. Boy, are there so many issues of Green Lantern Corps that was just so great this year. It was so hard to pick one. Issue 43, and I went through so many of them, and I'm like, what a dynamic issue 43 was. The Return of Kyle. There was teamwork there. Tomasi, Gleason, and crew. What they did. The Red Lantern guy. We talked about this one at length, but it was so cool to see Sornik fighting for the love of her life to, and just realizing how much this guy meant to her and not letting it go.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the fact that he died and that we see this quest for them to bring back Kyle. This was them defying death and saying no. They're like, this is not going to stand. We are not going to let it stand, and we are going to team up together and show you why. Death. Yeah. and that was, to me, that's what made it unique and special. Was it too soon? No, because it needed to be for this particular story. That's where it worked for me. It shocked me. I did not see it coming. That in itself was cool, because I figured, okay, we're going to send him to Necron's world, and we're going to see, he's going to bring back the heroes, and He's going to save the day because he's been there before, and we saw something completely different than what I expect. And I love that. I love that writers can still find ways to shock you and keep you excited. The swerve was great.
And it's the strength of willpower, which is, of course, is the green color. And that was something I really liked seeing, just that, that, as I said, it's the strength of will, but it's also the blending of will and love, and it was just... We had lengthy debate over, three hearts together and this and all that kind of deal. And it's, one of those, it's a event within an event within a title. So it was just like, bam, right there. And that was something that's definitely noteworthy and wow.
Issue number one for me. Like a huge shock. Favorite team book, Secret Six. Which issue, though? That was hard for me because I love, it's, very similar to Wonder Woman. I did manage to pin it down to a single issue. I picked issue number 9. Now, I was very tempted to choose issue number 8 because of the fantastic cameo.
Yes.
Which I thought the acting ability of the two guys in that cameo in issue 8, I thought was great. But issue number 9, I liked it so much I bought 2 of the pages. So, that says something in and of itself. This is the Battle for the Cowl tie-in. I love this because it could be read independent of the event or part of the larger happenings, which I think that says something for a writer, that they can have fun with this Battle for the Cowl event, but yet recognize that not every one of her readers is necessarily reading Battle for the Cowl. I loved it, but yet the story was very independent of everything where, it's thematically following it. We get to see Bane and Catman explore their own feelings about Batman needing a replacement. Are they suited for the task? Do they even want it? I like this issue so much, like I said, because I bought the 2 pages. And to my bat poll, that sounds a bit unsavory when you say it. Of course, everything sounds unsavory when you say it. Cheese stuffed manicotti. Ew, it does. And I've got that page. I own that page. It was so great to see them climbing up the wall like in the old 60s series, but the humor in that and just how wonderfully it worked, and the layout from the whole creative team and the colors, and Nicholas Scott, Doug Hazelwood, Jason Wright. These are people who, they all gel well together. Gail Simone, hands down, she's my favorite writer. I didn't do a favorite writer category because I knew you were going to do something in that league, so I'm like, let me just kind of do something a little different. Hands down my favorite writer because of this. The balance of great drama, great humor, and just not being afraid to go places that most people wouldn't dare to tread. Her mind is a scary place, and I love it. So, that for me was, I just love that book. That was my favorite issue of the year. In a very hard year to pick a favorite issue from Secret Six, but I bought 2 pages, so I think that says something.
Yeah,
when you want to own a part of but the gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. And that's been one of the great things. It was very hard to pick top 5 team books. And I've got a whole bunch of other team stuff that I want to talk about later when we're done wrapping up our best of the best.
Okay. Yeah. As you're going, I'm like, yeah. And it's funny because when I was doing my team dynamic type thing, and I knew already that Secret Six was going to win the individual, so I kept out. I was trying to keep stuff out of the top if I could, if I knew it was going to win later on. Sometimes I had to just bring it up and mention it, and I knew it was going to be your best just because I know you well enough to know, so I knew there'd be plenty of time to talk and gush and say how much we love it. So with me on the family dynamic, and this was an interesting one because I've always said I'm a Superman guy, and the stuff that's going on with Superman, it's in my top 3, but it's not my winner. It's my number 3 spot, which really did kind of shock me a little bit. And I'm enjoying what's going on with Clark. I'm enjoying seeing the world of New Krypton. Supergirl, as I said, her individual character. Then the stuff going on with Action Comics, with Superman titles, dealing with, Nightwing, Flamebird, General Lane, Mon-El, Guardian, all these great stuff going on with this whole Superman family that I was like, yes, this is a family. Yes, this is a universe. But there was just something kept it at the top, the number 3 spot. And looking back, I saw it was my number 2 spot goes to the Bat family. And the one thing that the Bat family had over the Superman family was, the presence of the new Batman. It's the presence of, and it was more of a stronger family matriarch, kind of like a patriarch, layout of the family, where you look to Dick Grayson, you look to Alfred, you look and see, like, with Commissioner Gordon, kind of like as the elderly uncle who steps in when when the father dies, and it's kind of like that whole. I was kind of looking, and I could see different people having different family roles. We always talk about how Dick and Tim are like brothers. They technically are adopted brothers of Bruce Wayne, but they have that same type of dealings. And Damian's the little brother who annoys the older brother, but he knows the older brother's got to do the job. Dad's not around anymore. I have to step up. I have to be the man of this household. And then they got Alfred in there, who's the grandfather type role, and it had more of a stronger family hierarchy, and even including going over onto with the Oracle side with Oracle and Batgirl, and just that mentoring kind of motherly type role and teacher role, and just that whole just kind of developing there. That was like, what? When I'm talking family, the Bat family right now is a stronger family unit. The Superman family has this presence, and they have this Superman universe going on, and it is, definitely they're all trying to step up and do the right thing, living by the examples that Superman set. But look at a family. I did go with the Bats as number 2. Of course, my winner I don't think should surprise anybody. It's the JSA. Looking at a family unit, JSA for me is that great family that I would love to be a part of. It's the older generation looking down on the younger generation, helping them, bringing them up, and not just, being there. It's, a team dynamic, individual, family. It's this entity. And you think about back, 4 years ago when I first started in this, I wasn't a JSA fan. I really didn't know who they were. And in this very short period of time, I understand what people had fears about when the team was splitting up. People were worried about losing that family element. And I was right along with them, because I was like, I am worried as well. I don't want to lose what I got. And, with Magog coming in, with that whole, I like the Magog character, but he wasn't in my individual character stuff, because part of it is, there is that villainous aspect of him. And I do worry, part of me does worry whether he's going to disrupt the harmony that is the JSA family. But I like the character so much, and just what they're doing with him by putting this, kind of antagonistic element in there. And they're taking the characters who would have less of a traditional connection, some of the younger characters, but they also have the classic Power Girl, Our Man, Star Girl, these classic JSA members there along with it to kind of keep that team together. So it's one of those, he's a character that I love to hate. And and it's not even love to hate, because I do enjoy when I read him. But it's, that whole, because every family's got that black sheep. Every family has that one member of your family. You're like, oh God, what'd they do now? Okay.
Some of them sing.
Yeah, some of them sing poorly. But, see, and with John's leaving, with William Henn and Sturgis, coming on to it, what they've done so far, what I'm looking forward to in the future, I'm definitely really excited about JSA, excited about JSA All-Stars. It was one of the things I really kind of wanted to talk about, but I'm going to stick to my, guns about that. But
Did you say Wilmingham?
No.
All right.
No, I said Willingham. Really? Just don't play back and don't re-listen to what I said.
I was like, what did you just say? I liked your whole excited rant, though. I was into it. It tells you how closely I was listening.
And don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Just let it go. I probably don't. But, that's.
No, I agree with you. The JSA is awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny because people always say, "Oh, it's a family," and I hate, because on one hand you can, people could look at it saying, that's a little cliche-ish kind of deal, but there really is that, the love going on between these characters, and it comes through as you're reading it, and when you get a good writer who understands that dynamic, you see it, and just
I'm going to go back to my solo books now and just kind of go through. What I did was, when I did my top 5, I got to the end and I'm like, one of the things that's really bothering me is I just thought this was a stellar year of quality. And I thought, I'm like, it would be real easy for me to stop at just my top 5 and not talk about the rest of the books. But I'm like, I thought there were a lot of worthy series. So I started going through, and just off of memory, I started listing series that I just enjoyed this year. And as I was going through, I'm like, wow, the line produced just a lot of great books that were in my pull list for a lot of different reasons. Not because of the show, because honestly, I wouldn't hesitate to drop something for, that I'm grabbing for the show and just say, I only picked up this issue, because we're going to talk about it on the show. Because I think that would be interesting for our listeners as well to say, okay, Sean's not pulling this one because he's not into it. But these books all have valid places in there. So I'm like, why don't I go through each title and pick out a favorite issue for the title and talk about why. And if I don't have a favorite issue, talk about thematically what that title did for me this year. Because and these aren't in any particular order. I did my top 5 so that way we had like a Raging Oscars hierarchy for them. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of just go through and talk about like books like Vigilante number 11, for example. I am going to miss this series. And I don't know if it's fair to say that I had a favorite issue of this. Vigilante was about the slowly unfolding mystery. This is another series where color stood out for me, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk to David Barron about the techniques and methodology to his work on this book, because it felt very cinematic to me. Issue 11 was the issue where the reporter was tracking Vigilante down after the death of his girl. And it was about responsibility. That features some great writing by Wolfman, but also some fantastic art by Walter Simonson and Jean-Paul Leon and Steve Wands. And we chose this as our Vigilante Challenge issue, and I hope some of you found a reason to go back and pick up the rest of the series. For me, it was fun following the series to find out who Vigilante was, but also what motivated him to be Vigilante. I wish this series had continued, because I think there was so much more planned, and there was so much further you could go with this book. And I just loved it. Atmosphere, mood, it just felt different and unique, and that's because of creative. I got to talk about Power Girl.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite issues about Power Girl was issue number 4. That was the movie issue with Tara. This series is a blast, and I had trouble picking a favorite here again. I'm so glad they're using the new Tara as supporting cast. Kara getting her own life together, and it's cool that she had the chance to help the fish out of water Tara adjust to the surface world. Being an alien herself, Kara understands the different culture. Seeing the horror movie together was just a blast, with some great physical comedy by Amanda Connor in that artwork. Because it really wasn't just facial expressions, it was the whole movement and everything about the character. It was just fun. And I love that about it. If you like the Supergirl story in Wednesday's comics, you're going to feel right at home with the tone of this series. It's like I said, a lot of fun. Power Girl fighting giant mechanical illusions, or giant magical illusions, I should say, lets us see her fighting a larger-than-life monster. The series has a great deal of charm. I love that we see her personal life, the challenges of being a superhero, running a business, the whole stalker thing. This is Gray and Palmiotti at their best. Very different from their other offering, and this is anything actually we've seen from them. And it's the strength of the series. We see them stretch their creative muscles and do something different. If you're not picking this book up, it's a lot of fun. It's good superhero storytelling. Karen. Because she's a Supergirl from Earth 2. I'm calling her Kara all the way through. It's actually Karen Starr. I apologize, so I'll correct myself right now before I get emails. But Karen Starr is a great example of where going off of emotion when you're writing this one. Karen Starr, the Supergirl from Earth 2.
And if you, I was getting ready. I wasn't going to interrupt your rant.
Right.
I was just going, okay, come on, Sean. Come on, Sean.
Wait for
come
it.
on. Sean, it's Karen.
Yeah. But Karen is just an amazing character. I'm so into this book. It's, like I said, it's fun. If you aren't picking it up, do yourself a favor. Supergirl, you were talking about it before, and I mentioned Supergirl number 43 is my favorite issue, and this one was hands down. I had no hesitation. Gilding Day. Just an amazing example of beautiful art, great character development. It's all about a daughter making tough decisions of what is best for her future. Does she honor her deceased father by joining his guild, or connect with her mother, who is currently in major turmoil? I really like that this issue was teaching us about Kryptonian lore, and a daughter coming to terms with the death of her father, and what is best for her family that's still living. It felt very real because we all hold on to loss, guilt with the death of Superwoman, resentment, compassion, and confusion towards Allura. This issue was my favorite because it felt so personal about the character. I felt like I knew Kara at the end of this issue. Not Karen, Kara. We have our Supergirls right now. But It was. The artwork by Jamal Igle was stunning, and just a great, the colors, inks, everything's all just,
Yes.
beautiful issue that was, it wasn't a heavy combat issue. It wasn't about that. It was about getting to know the character and feeling like she's a person. Yeah. I felt like I could hang and chat with her, and that was cool. Action Comics 876. Rucka, Barrows, Jose, and crew. Mom, I need your help. I was so glad to see Chris back, and it built the anticipation of the moments with Lois. This one's on my list because of Last Son, where we got to see Lois debating with herself over whether or not she could be a mother and growing to love this boy as her own. Now he's back, rapidly aging, and I wanted to see this payoff. I loved in this series in general, just to talk about beyond it, the slow build to the love between Thera and Chris and the idea that this is part of Kryptonian mythology. I want to see the expanded Superman universe still exist as a part of his world out of this. But that was that moment I wanted so much to see when he went to her for help. That was cool. I liked that a lot. And the mystery, I didn't see that it was I don't know why I didn't see that it was going to be him under that.
Yeah.
Thera wasn't like, she was part of the whole Kryptonian, New Krypton thing. That didn't surprise me, but to see that it was Chris, and I was like, whoa, that was cool. And I should have seen it coming. Superman number 694. This is Mon-El's first New Look issue. And even more important than the look was his fight with Bizarro, where we got to see him just kind of... You saw him in the background swooping in, and he comes in and saves the day and has this great battle with him where you see a more confident Mon-El. In many ways, more seasoned because of what he's gone through. The torment he went through, and yet finding the strength and the desire and the chutzpah to come on back and just be the superheroic character that we all know he's capable of. And that was really cool. Also, the conversations with Connor Kent. Seeing him with Superboy and having that different, both of them with their relationships with Superman, and going to Superboy, who had to find his... Superboy, when he first made his appearance, was saying that he was Superman and did not want to be called Superboy, even though he was being labeled that by the media. Yet he learned to look up to Clark. Not only did he learn to look up to Clark in many ways, kind of like Kara, how he had to learn, that's who that is. But he's been going through so much of what would Superman do, what would Luthor do, and learning how to come into his own and move beyond that. That for him and Mon-El to have these moments where Mon-El's like, how can I best serve Clark? How can I best serve his legacy? Because I'm not doing too good of a job here at the moment. And it was great how these two helped each other in many ways. And how Connor showed some maturity in those moments. Just great writing, showing that they knew both of these characters and what they'd been through throughout the whole year. It was just a wonderful issue. And it was, again, talking about where now we've got a balance of combat, but again... Great character development, great character drama. Comics do that, and it's balance of getting to know characters amidst these great fighting scenes. It makes the issues not cookie cutter. It makes the issues serialized storytelling that we all want to follow and we're captivated by, and I love that. Green Lantern. This was a tough call. I picked issue number 49. At first. Then, because that was the Jon Stewart issue, and I was like, oh, that was so cool. Then I went back and I was reading through the issues and browsing through. I ultimately chose issue number 46. Khufu and Shayera being revealed as a part of the Star Sapphire's power battery due to their tragic love. I just so love that. Sinestro being recruited in the awesome moments with Hal and Carol. Mongol versus Sinestro, which is how a confrontation should be done. You had these two factions, and that was a battle.
Yes.
You got to really see and respect both. And wait, talk about a situation where neither character lost anything in that battle. Neither character lost anything. That was just a bad battle. It was a great way to do that. And an amazing cliffhanger. There was a ton to love in Green Lantern, but this was my favorite issue with that Jon Stewart one. Ooh, being a close second because I loved those character-driven moments that we talked about with Jon Stewart. But 46 was my favorite. That was one where I was kind of like, ooh. And it really wasn't just because of Khufu and Shayera. Although that gives extra credit. Yeah. You gotta love that. Batman Confidential. There was an arc that I really, really enjoyed. That's issues 37 to 39. That kicked off that cool arc with Lady Blackhawk.
Yes.
And I'm a huge fan of Zinda from Birds of Prey. She held on to that Black Hawk legacy. What happens when those you look up to have somehow returned? You thought they were dead? What happens when they start to seem to tarnish their legacy? How do you deal with that? There's some questions that are presented like that to Zinda and Bruce in this arc. I love the atmosphere in this. The coloring fits the Black Hawk world, and being one with the sky. It felt like something you'd see in like Rocketeer or something like that, but not quite as like ethereal as all that, but it did feel like you were in the sky. It felt like that kind of atmosphere. And that was something that, colors and mood and atmosphere. Kudos to David Barron. It must be interesting and challenging to work on a series like that with different creative teams, because you figure every arc, you're changing it up a bit. And how do you get into the head of the writer and the artist to try and capture their vision and change up what you've been doing on the series? Because that book does change up its tone and appearance based on who's writing it and what they're doing. Royal McGraw, Marcos Mars, Luciano Del Negro deliver a story that captures what's cool about the Black Hawk's past. It's an interesting concept of how members could have survived in this tale of legacy, honor, selfishness, betrayal, and even redemption. It just had it all. And I was missing Lady Blackhawk. I was so glad to see her back. I'm glad we're getting her in Birds of Prey again this year. It's a character I love. And they handle her very well in that story.
Yeah, Brave and the Bold. Brave and the Bold is one of those titles that it was on my chopping block, and then JMS took over, and I just continued on with it.
What does that got to do with Batman Confidential?
I just felt like throwing it out there.
We're going to talk about Brave and the Bold. We're not there yet.
I want to talk about
it. Random Facts by Jim Segulin. Coke Zero surprisingly tastes like regular Coke. Wow. The Shield. I went with issue number 2 on this one. This was the team-up between Magog and S.H.I.E.L.D., showing two very different philosophies on being a soldier, based on different experiences. Being non-military myself, this really showed me that there's nothing cookie-cutter at all about being in the armed forces. Based on rank, field, branch of the armed forces, your outlook could be very unique. Got to give props to friend of the show Art Lyon for this one. I'll mention more when we talk about Widening Gyre, because that's going to be in my limited series section. But I love his color work because he changes it up from series to series based on mood, setting, and overall tone of the book. This is something I'm really learning to appreciate about colorists. I mentioned this about David Barron before too. Alan Pasalacqua does this. I'm noticing, wow, how many great color artists there are out there in comics and what they bring to the table. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a very pretty book. They're definitely around, and they don't look all that happy to see us. The 2-page spread, just a ton of pop with those two characters. I'm a big fan of Eric Trotman's writing with Greg Rucka on Checkmate, and this is the perfect book for him. I'm so glad the DC Universe has an all-American hero that has the Captain America archetype, but doesn't feel anything at all like a clone. Both characters offer something very different, and that is a testament to great character development, and the suit's very cool. I am loving learning more about it. It does offer the opportunity to expand the character's abilities over time if necessary. Very sharp and dynamic pencils by Marco Rudy with inks by Mick Gray, letters by Sal Cipriano. This is a very cool creative team. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about these books after the one-shots, and it's funny how when this went to series, it put my mind to rest. I am glad the co-features are going to rotate to introduce us to new characters. I do want the S.H.I.E.L.D. stories to continue, though. I'm invested in this character. I want to see him continue as the main feature, and I'm glad that's happening. I like the rotating co-features thing that's going to be going on. It's a cool book. It's a great start. That is one big damn monkey indeed. It's just a great ending of that issue.
What funny thing, a long time ago we were talking about, and what kind of hero, what type of powers would you want to have? And a lot of times it's a common geek chat, and I'm a Superman guy, but I wouldn't want to have all of his powers. Just the fact that you hear everything going on in the universe, knowing you can't help and save everybody, that would get to me. Just that whole thing. And then Green Lantern's another one. I think, that'd be kind of neat, but I know I don't have the willpower or the discipline to maintain, a energy shield and big images of a fist punching people while I am, keeping my, individual personal force field up and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't do it, and you think about it. One time I was playing City of Heroes. and I'm flying around a city of heroes. While I'm doing that, I'm trying to focus my mind, saying, keep up the energy. And I was just trying to like focus on all the different things the hero was doing, as if I needed a power ring to do it. And I failed miserably. I would have, crashed and died a long time ago. But the S.H.I.E.L.D. character is the kind of hero that I would actually like to be and think I could be. Because it's, his layout, just who he is and what he's about. It's that whole, I always thought, if I ever did get like superhuman powers, metahuman, would I want to be the masked vigilante, or would I actually sign up and become a cop? Or become a Fed, or something like that, where I would have legitimate arrest authorities, but instead of having to carry a gun, I've got, these superhuman powers. Or instead of riding around in a squad car, I could fly to the thing. And it's, the kind of, one of the things that really connects me with this character and just everything that he's going through is because I'm like, yeah, I would want to be this guy. This is the kind of hero I would want to be, because he's got some cool powers, but he's not like super inhuman that there's no way he's going to get defeated. So there's that chance there could be some defeat. He could die very easily. If he gets caught in crossfire, if he deals with multiple metas. We saw him dealing with the Great 10 in recent issues that really stretched and pushed him to the limit. But we also saw him using his powers, using what the suit gives him, for resources in other ways. I thought that was he's a character that lives by the code: improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I really just enjoy that humanistic aspect of him. See, that time I talked about what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was great.
I was silent.
I'm actually helping to design your suit.
Okay.
I've got a lab of technicians, and we're putting in everything that you asked for. We're just now finishing touches on the force field enhanced super muzzle.
Oh, okay.
It's really to protect your singing voice, really.
Yes.
The Web 3 and 4. Now, the reason why I chose the two issues here, because it really was this great flow-through of Oracle and Batgirl showing him a better way and making him more effective. Some responsibility for throwing that tech out there, giving him a better way to use his network to his advantage. I love the idea of him coming to a compromise with Oracle to be sort of sanctioned by her, and her wanting to keep an eye on him. It makes sense that you would want to keep a short leash on a hero who's using your domain as a source. But it is interesting, I liked the idea that this guy was like, well, let's throw the tech out there and have my eyes all over the place. It just backfired a little bit because there were no checks and balances, or at least not enough checks and balances to what he was doing out there. And he found out the hard way that people were not going to be the kind of hero that he wanted them to be, and eventually they were going to think that they were going to be a better web than he was, or have better ideas on how to do it. And I liked that exploration as well. But this, where Batgirl and Oracle showed up, it just makes so much sense with the fact that he was using the internet, that he would come under Barbara's radar, and that she would do something, and she'd bring her agent in. It reminded me of what I liked about the original classic Birds of Prey, when it first kicked off with having just Dinah as her agent initially, and that's what's working with Batgirl. I cannot wait for Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot wait. Yeah. It's funny with with this is kind of like a tease. I'm like, ooh, we're heading back into the goodness of having the squad. I'm like, ooh, yes.
It's like a junkie. Just here, you have a little taste.
It is. That is what it is. Batgirl's been like a taste of what's coming. Woo. Speaking of Batgirl, let's talk about Batgirl number 3. Brian Q. Miller, Lee Garbett, Trevor Scott, Sandra Hope, Guy Major, John J. Hill, with cool covers by Phil Noto. I am sure I did some name butchery somewhere in there, and I apologize. Issue number 3 was my favorite because of the meeting of the minds. Barbara sees in Stephanie what we do as the reader. This reminds me so much of what I liked about her in her brief tenure as Robin. Stephanie is human. She wants to be a hero. She wants to make a difference. She wants to learn to be her best. Yet she's fun. She adapts. She makes mistakes and keeps coming back. There's a lot that is inspiring about this girl. Oracle has her own ideas, but she also is known for seeing potential and not being afraid to go against Bruce and Dick and just about anybody else. When she believes in something, she'll stand up for it. She's very independent, and she's earned that spot. It's fun to watch her grow into a source of support for Stephanie. Her help and assistance leading to a new costume for Stephanie makes sense. I'm glad they built this over 3 issues of Barbara seeing what she was made of. And I'm glad it wasn't just instant, like, oh, hey, you're Batgirl, I love it, all that type of stuff. She had to, over time, get used to the idea and adapt. And I love that about this book. And it is something, it's funny how this is so nicely leading into the idea that we could come back to a Birds of Prey, because she's really slowly dropping back into that role again really fast. Yeah. Now, I shouldn't say slowly. It really is becoming very fast, where this would make her say, you know what, I think we need to put... It's time to put the band back together.
There's a need, and that is in the heart of the true hero.
I agree.
When you have that need, you must step up and you must do what needs to be done.
They're still operating in the cave, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember you told me by now they wouldn't be. Just saying. I like the bad bunker too. I like the whole. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, you could have.
No, I couldn't. I really couldn't. I'm incapable of it. I'm insensitive that way. I'm admitting my own mistakes, and I'm trying to grow from them. I just won't. Adventure Comics. This is another choice that was not easy. Talk about a gorgeous series. I was torn between issue 2's date issue with Wonder Girl and Superboy for the sheer romance and human moments of awkwardness, as the reveal of the relationship with Tim was put on the table, the stuff with Crypto, but issue 3 actually won out. Superboy and Red Robin having that heart-to-heart about his fears with Luthor and Superman, and Tim's need to be believed that Bruce was still alive. This is a great example of how good friends help each other. These are like brothers. Best friends just know you, what you need, and enhance you. This worked on so many levels, and I love that it felt like it took place in Red Robin as well in dialogue and tone. I'm talking about it felt like it was a part of that series, like something that was happening in between panels. Great attention to the work that Yost and crew is doing in that book by Jeff Johns, and let's just take a moment and to truly enjoy the artist that is Francis Manapul. I've enjoyed him since Top Cow's Necromancer, and he just keeps growing and growing and growing. And what does Brian Brusaletto? He knows how to add color to his artwork. It's just a great creative team and a great meshing of teams. And this is something where you talk about editorial. I got to admit, I'm an idiot when it comes to understanding. I'd love to at some point in time talk with an editor about, what do you do and how does that work? Because I know that there's so much behind the scenes that editorial does to kind of pull people together. I know different editors operate in different ways, so there's no one cookie cutter way to say this is what an editor does. But I know that an editor had something to do with these guys going together and working with the writer and the artist and everything, kind of putting it all meshing. But it is a great example of how letters, inks, everything. This book is gorgeous. And it just fits that. But this issue in particular, it really moved me because it felt like a great Superboy story. And it felt like a great Red Robin story that in no way, shape, or form contradicted what's currently going on in the Red Robin book. And I really dig that. And that's something I think DC's been tightening up on over the course of the year. In a way, and I think it's hard to do when you've got these characters appearing in so many different places. And I do think it's something that this is a great example of hats off to a writer understanding these characters so well and paying attention to what's going on with them. I think that was very well done.
Oh yeah, big time. And it's funny because you talk about how it felt like the Red Robin, which I completely agree, but it also, to me, had this Titans feel to it.
Oh sure, absolutely.
And that for the Teen Titans feel, the stuff that I loved about with Tim and Connor's relationship and just their friendship, and I so want to see them all back together on Teen Titans with with Wonder Girl, throw in Bart into the mix again, just get the classic Teen Titans back. Now, I don't want to take away from the existing current Teen Titans that we have out there, because Titans is a title that it's starting again to do that chugga, just building back up and pulling me back into it. It slipped a little bit. I was still enjoying reading it. We had the Blackest Night stuff come in and got me going, oh, cool. And then some of these spotlight issues and of the different Titans, and they're moving on to different things, but it's still there's still that Teen Titans feel. There's still that I want to say Titans together. I want to I still want to hold on to the to that team, and seeing those two together brought that back to me, brought that same emotional feeling I had. It's one of those, when dealing with Red Robin, I did have a lot of issues with the ending of Robin and becoming a Robin, and I was like, the Red Robin, and I enjoyed the story. I know.
The ending of Robin becoming a Robin.
The ending of Robin becoming a Red Robin. It wasn't...
Shooting and eating a Robin. Plucking a Robin.
You know what I meant.
Sure. Red Robin.
Yeah. As Red Robin is going on, I'm seeing more of the Tim that I like. I'm seeing more of my friend come back, and it's even not even. I can't even say that it was bad writing that he wasn't doing. It was good writing, it was solid writing that showed his flow through to who he is, and that just makes it be appreciated more. But just this sign of it was a great little thing. Okay, Tim's coming out of the tunnel. Tim, it's coming back. He's coming. We're getting Tim Drake back, and it's just that. It's that growth, and it's all these interconnections of the different events that we're seeing that I'm like, yeah.
Nicieza and Williams II, when they were working on the end run of that Robin series, put him in a place that organically led him to the place that we're seeing him in Red Robin. They really ended off that series putting that character where he was supposed to be.
Yeah, and
they did, and that's why I think it feels so good right now with him coming back, because that flow all the way through really worked. And I've got to say, Robin has been a character, and I've said this on the show multiple times, who has been very, very lucky. Overall, almost all of the creative teams that have worked on Robin have done just a bang-up job at just keeping that flow of who Tim Drake is all the way through. And it's been funny with a lot of the creative juggling that's gone on with that character over the recent years. He's batted really high on the professionalism and the quality of what's being delivered in a Robin title.
Yes.
It was one of those books that, why did Red Robin wind up in my top 5? And I was kind of like, well, and those are things that earned bonus points for me, because I'm like, wow, this has just felt great.
And Tim didn't get in my top 3, but and that was a tough one for me because I wanted to, but I was like, you know what, I see why they went through this process, and I respect and I enjoyed that, especially what I'm seeing now, just him coming out of that darkness. And you talked about that Tam Fox issue. That was just a wonderful issue dealing with all that. And it was just something kept me from putting it in the top 3. It was probably a solid 4 or 5 for me. And it was weird for me to say that about Tim. And I put Dick Grayson over him. And I'm not really. I was never a Batman guy.
I did too, though. I did too.
And it's a weird thing when you try to.
Although we did different books, because you did the.
I did Batman. You did
Batman and
Robin. So it's weird when we try to rank these things, because I kept guessing myself. I kept removing people, putting them back in, changing things around. And that's why I actually went with 3, because I had more of a solid 3 than I did 5 or 10. Because if I had to rank these things, it would have been impossible.
The hardest thing for me was picking individual issues. I couldn't do it on every title. It just didn't fit for every single title. Like the next one I'm going to talk about, I had trouble with the top 5. There are a lot of these titles that I'm talking about now that I'm like, ooh.
You wish you'd put it in there. Like,
and that's why I wanted to talk about them, though, because I think they're quality books, and this is kind of a Speeding Bullets, Raging Oscar segment. But I really wanted to make sure I noted what was special about these books this year, because that's what doing this kind of episode is about for me. It's about talking about what works in these titles. So I didn't want to limit myself just to the top 5. I wanted to rank those so that way we had those winners. But then I wanted to go through and talk about what were the winning issues within each individual title, because I think there was a lot to talk about. And you're talking about 12 issues in each book, in most cases. There was 12 issues in each book to really kind of pick through and try to rank. Batman, I couldn't do it. Because similar to Wonder Woman, this isn't about favorite issues. I loved what Winnick did on his run, because he gave us a bridge from Battle of the Cowl that saw the journey with Dick Grayson as he and Alfred come up with ways for him to adapt to the Batman role, to Dick Grayson's style, while not losing the groundwork and lose what Bruce had laid out previously. This book is a very tough one as far as not winding up in my top 5. I had a real tough time, as a Batman fan, because it was great. Tony Daniel is delivering a sexy mystery with Black Mask that includes Huntress and Oracle, but also the larger Gotham universe of Hush, Arkham, and the Mob, to show us that great Batman storytelling involves detective work. I'm so anxious to see what the Riddler will bring out of all this. It's an exciting time to be following Batman at the road to 700, because we're getting there for issue 700 of Batman. I'm sorry, go ahead. I know.
Well, it's when you're talking with the Batman about with Winnick and Daniel and all that. When I'm picking between the two of them, which Batman, I was the same deal. When you said you were picking favorite titles, I can't really. It's a tough call between the stuff that Winnick did with that great Two-Face, the ending of that Two-Face story arc, and then the stuff going on with that Daniel's doing it with Black Mask. I'm like how do you? And I couldn't pick one or the other.
I couldn't either.
You're seeing just some really cool stuff out of that, and that was just. It has to be said that
I had all of the issues from the year laid out, and I literally was starting to go through them, and I'm like, I can't pick an issue. I just really can't. And my focus is on the Dick Grayson issues and that, because I do think that's where I'm like, woof. This year really just kind of took off with this book, and I couldn't pick between the two concepts. Booster Gold. This was another tough book to pick a single issue, but I did. Issue number 16. This Enemy Ace issue surprised me. It was part of that Faces of Evil thing that was going on. I love pieces that take place out of time. Enemy Ace was a cool exploration of how Booster Gold needs to think quickly on his feet when he's put into an era. I love that he pulled off his costume as an experimental prototype in the wartime era, where that would be a common practice, so it worked to just kind of, and the American Cyrus being an ancestor of Max Lord, having to deal with the fact, could he change time this way? Learning that some elements of time are fixed from his previous experiences with, and showing his growth, that he can't rescue Blue Beetle this way. It's just not gonna work. And that being very tough, though, seeing that ancestor right there and recognizing, ugh, I could, but I'm not gonna, because I know. And it's just a great book. I love Booster Gold. And this close second for me was the Batman arc, where we got to see Dick Grayson kind of taken out of time and how he had to go back and correct that. That was a tough one for me not to pick. But this issue in particular just really worked for me because I love those pieces where we get to see a historical piece at a time, where we see classic DC Universe like Enemy Ace, and how well that works with current characters and how those concepts are classic for a reason, that, they just hold up.
I digged seeing Booster deal with Booster when he came across his younger, his other version of himself, and just that first reaction that he had with, oh, you must have saved Ted, because there's no way we would have done this if we couldn't have Ted in there. And he's like, and he didn't say anything. He's like, I can't say anything. And I liked seeing that conflict, just that dealings between the two of them. And it's Booster Gold is one of those titles that I wouldn't think of even dropping that in a minute, just because it's not in my. I've never put it in my top 10, but it is just that title that every time I read it, I enjoy it.
See, that's just it. That's why I wanted to do this too. I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the reasons why am I doing this, because these are all books that I wouldn't drop in a million years.
Yeah, this thing's so locked,
and I don't know where to put them as far as rank wise. I did my top 5, which I stick with. I think that's great. But these are other books that I'm like, you know what? No, these are. I want to note these because 2009 was just a banner year. So these are books I just want to note. Green Arrow, Black Canary. Now, this is another one of those books I couldn't pick a single issue, because what I liked about Green Arrow was the experimental nature of it with the co-feature. Because of the fact that you were dealing with Green Arrow and Black Canary, and that they were married and interacting and all that, these are creators who kind of took the ball on this one and kind of said, okay, what kind of fun things can we do with this co-feature and really try to make work. And I think that some issues work better than others with it, but I like the whole concept of this ride with Poison Arrow. I was glad to see Mia return. I think this creative team was getting the ball rolling, and I'm glad to see they ended it with such class. The story wrapped up nice into the current Justice League of America arc, and I know that was actually something that happened in this year versus last year, but I think it was the nice flow through the year that they wrapped up their storyline from the year of this Poison Arrow quest in such a neat way, because I was enjoying following her. I thought she was an interesting villain, and the supporting cast of the police officer that was, and tuned in with the Green Arrow family. Yeah, I liked Hilt. And it was, I'm going to miss the co-feature concept because I thought it was a clever way to play around with the storytelling. Do you have any other favorite moments from this year with Green Arrow?
Well, comedy kind of moment, and I'm pretty sure it occurred during 2009 and not the end of 2008, but it was right around there when Mia first left. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to see her go because I love the Arrow family, but just she had that whole bit where she's talking to them and like, well, make sure you bring protection. She's like, oh yeah, I'm all about the condoms. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, you meant bow and arrow. I still laugh at it. And that was the thing that saved me on the creative team, because that's the new creative team who wrote that in there, who wrote that little funny joke. I'm like, okay, they kind of get the sense of humor. They're gonna do it okay, and just the continuation exploration with the what's I can't think of the villain's the death villain, who she blew out his eardrums. Can't think of what name they gave him.
I know who you're talking about too.
I want to say Maestro, but it wasn't that.
No, but it was all because of the canary cry and that he lost his hearing and all that, and
just that whole play out where the one issue they introduce it, then they flesh it out later.
I liked the whole where she couldn't talk and how they played that out visually. I would love to see the script and how that looked on that one, because that had been interesting to draw with a character who can't hear now because of that. So I thought that was kind of cool and interesting. That was a moment that worked. See Black Canary kind of step up there.
Yeah.
Because she's a character, it's funny, Black Canary, ever since she got dumped as the leader of the JLA, things haven't been too kind on her.
Yeah.
That was, it's funny, not in this title, but it was more the Justice League. That's one of the things I will say, I don't... There's not much I complain about, but there's things, when I dislike it, And Black Canary is a character I wish they'd resolved in the Justice League.
Yeah.
Because I thought she was an excellent team leader. I thought she earned that spot from her portrayal in Birds of Prey. I thought that this character deserved to be the chairperson of the Justice League, and it worked. I was so into it. She was running the show there the way Power Girl was. And I'm so disappointed that was never, at least I didn't feel that was ever adequately resolved.
Yeah,
and that was something with that character that I thought that they headed her down a path, and I know that was something that McDuffie was going to resolve, and he had a plan for that, and I wish that had somehow played out. It's it is something that can still play out, but I'd so like to see her get hers, from that, 'cause she deserves to.
Yeah,
she deserves a little, I don't know, payback's maybe not the right word, but she deserves one of those,
moments.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I want to keep it clean.
Well, I think we're going to get some.
She wants to give a big you-know-what to everybody, and she should.
I think we're going to get some, moments like that in Birds of Prey.
I think
we're going to see her, once again recover from what happened. We're to see her step up and say, "This is who I am. This is why I'm doing it. This is what I do." And that is, something that it's going to be kind of really curious to see, and just seeing how her and Ollie, if they're going to continue around, are we going to lose that relationship?
Let's talk about that right now, because I've enjoyed the Green Arrow Black Canary title. It's funny how I'm in a place where I could see that relationship going either way, and I don't know that I'm upset about it.
Really? See,
I mean, and I'm very torn right now. If we were talking about Lois and Clark right now, I would be threatening to burn down the DC offices if they tried to break those two up. I'm very torn because I can't see Black Canary, unless there's a really darn good reason, walking away from a marriage without trying to make it work. Now, there could be a really darn good storytelling reason why it wouldn't work. And that's no knock on the concept of the two of them together, or that I like them in their title. It's just I gotta think there's going to be some turmoil to this couple, because
there's definitely going to be some turmoil and just some dealings. I think they're going to survive.
Do you think
really think they're going to survive, and it's going to be.
I'm torn.
I think it's going to be just because there is such a strong passion between the two of them that it's going to but it's underneath the passion there is the love, and there is the respect, and there is the the just that admiration they each have, and they want to see each one be better.
We've seen a lot of healthy passion between the two of them in Green Arrow Black Canary, so it's funny. I'm that's why I'm torn, because I've seen things that I really like and how they've been handled there. Yet I can see with where their relationship's heading, and with the way things are going with Ollie, that putting a lot of strain on a marriage. And the question is Canary going to be the one to make that decision, or is Ollie?
Well, I see Ollie trying to end it to save her the pain in the long run, and her just kind of doing. I don't know. Her doing the and not actually being over, knowing we got to figure out, so or just. It's that I don't think she's not going to let it end, but she's not going to be that clingy, doormat type character, because she is too strong for that.
Yeah.
And she's going to do what she needs to do, but it's not over in her mind. And does that make sense what I'm saying?
I'll totally make it 100%. Let me ask you this question. Would you be upset if their marriage ended?
Depending on how the story was told and by who, no. But, if...
See, I guess that's what I was trying to say. It's not that I love them being married. I like that concept, but yet I'm not as locked into the two of them being married as I am, say, Lois and Clark is the best example.
Our Man and Libertyville. Yeah. I actually would be more upset.
Peter and Mary Jane. Sorry, it's the wrong company, but
who?
Peter and Mary Jane.
Who?
Yeah.
But actually,
no. And I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that as a knock on Marvel. There are couples that I like together, and I think creatively they work. I think there's interesting ways. Like if you want to tell Superman stories without Lois, write a book called Earth One.
Yeah.
I like that concept. Ultimate Spider-Man. Great way to tell those stories. So those are, and I like Spider-Man. I'm reading Spider-Man right now. I like Spider-Man, so please don't take that as a knock. I love the character. I think it's one of those characters where it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's what you said. I agree with you about that. With Mary Jane Spider-Man, I would want to see them together. Lois and Clark definitely. I couldn't let those two go. I'd be right next to you with the torch, burning down the building if they tried to break up that marriage. But
I say that though, when I'm still reading Spider-Man.
Right, and
so I say that, but I mean,
Well,
so I do want to preface that. That's why I wanted to throw that out there, because I'm not throwing a knock. And I found a lot of good, and so I'm curious. I don't want to go into heavy Spider-Man discussion, but I do want to preface that by saying I am still reading Spider-Man, and that didn't take me away from it.
And just like if they do break up Green Arrow, Black Canary, I probably still will continue to read Green Arrow. I don't see myself dropping it because of the marriage broke up. If they don't give me a really solid, cool story arc, I will be upset over it. If it's just boom, it's done. Come on, we need
Here's
something.
the funny part. I've just kind of basically admitted that if it's good Superman storytelling, if they did it, I'd probably still read Superman too. I'd be angry though.
See, here's the thing.
You know what?
I'm
going to take it back. Ahead of Spider-Man, I put Superman's marriage. You know what? That one would bug me.
I don't think I could handle that one.
You know what? Because I am still reading Spidey. I'm working through it still.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could with Superman. That's a marriage that you can't touch in my eyes. You can't.
The only way that Superman, in my eyes, that Superman and Lois could not be married is if they killed off one of them. Is the only way I would not be. I still would be upset if they killed off Lois, because
I would too.
I would be. But if they told it in a good story, I'd be okay with. I could get by. I'd go through the stages of grief, and I would go through all that. And I would work through it. If they got a divorce,
we'd be going to the same psychologist.
Oh God, yeah, that would definitely. That would be a tough one to deal with, because that is just such a strong.
I'd be like, what about
story.
Bob?
Yeah,
it'd be kind of like, there's Sean again. He's like, I can't go out of the house because he's afraid of seeing something Superman related.
There would be so much pain, but just the breakup of that marriage, I don't think I could handle that. That would be an ender for me, and I would probably get the issue. Where they showed the story, and then I'd be like, I can't do it anymore, just because I can't lose this. I can lose anything else, but I can't lose that, that relationship. Just like, there's so much that, no.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a passion.
Tangent we got
that's
on
a
there.
Passion too. I could deal with Black Canary. I could deal with, other characters, but not Lois and Clark.
I got a couple more books I want to go through really, really quick in solos, and then we can wrap up this segment and kind of go on to our next one. Magog #1. I loved Magog teaching self-defense to the girl in this issue. It wasn't just about rescuing her. He was empowering her to take charge of her own life. This can be dangerous. It's not always such a good idea, because she can go around beating up a whole bunch of people and do all that. But I did like that about Magog. It wasn't just about rescuing somebody. I think that fits a soldier, and it fits his mentality, and it fits. I shouldn't say just any soldier, because again, like I told you with the S.H.I.E.L.D. issue, that shows me that not every member of the armed forces is even going to handle that situation the same way. And that made me earn more respect for people who are in the armed forces, to see the S.H.I.E.L.D. and him together. But going back to this book, this particular soldier, with his way of training and his way of thinking, this is how he would deal with it. And I like that right now I'm correcting myself on that, because that shows how great comics now have taught me something about the armed forces. Somebody who's, I'm a civilian. I don't understand it in the way that you do, or that anybody who's been in the armed forces does. And these comics have taught me something that I now respect even more about our people that join the armed forces, because it's two very different portrayals of two different soldier style characters, showing that there's something very unique and very different and very personal about, depending on what their rank is and what branch they're in and that type of thing. And Magog in that situation, that's what I liked about that issue. It stood out for me. I've enjoyed, though, in the series so far, this idea that the Magog entity is something more, and how is David going to deal with that? Is that part of what's causing some of the issues that we're seeing with him? Will he be able to resolve that? I think we're seeing David gone from the team.
David's gone. David's
and I don't think that was an accident on those issues. I think we're really seeing, like, what we saw in the annual is like it.
I think that he's gone bye-bye.
Yeah, so...
And it's, he's a Marine, and I really do like that character, and it just so I go through such passion with him, because as I said, I'm so into the JSA family, and he is that cog, and I want him to.
I'm starting to really like him.
But I wanted to.
Like I told you before, he's a character I want to tie up at a Volkswagen place and play punch buggy with him. But it's one of those things where, and I want to tie him up because I don't want him to be able to hit the cat. But I want to preface that he needs to be heavily restrained.
Like, what's that? A mosquito?
Yeah, that's one of those. Yeah, and I can and muzzled, so that way I don't hear him laughing at me, because I know I won't do any harm. But I want to feel like I'm doing it. But anyway, he is one of those characters, though, and his support, his buddy and how he's helping him out, and there's something about him I'm starting to like. I don't agree with his methodology, but I like the book. I'm into him. The artwork's sharp. It's Howard Porter. It's looking great. So it's a book I'm following, and he's a character I'm uncomfortable with, which is kind of cool. And I like that about him. So he's something different in my reading library, and that's what I like about Magog. Azrael, issue number 2. I was so glad to see this series launched. This was the issue that featured the great White Ghost and Huntress appearance, but White Ghost the most in this one, because can he avoid being driven crazy by a suit of armor that he wears? This suit of armor has this emotional, time bomb thing going on. White Ghost puts him in a dilemma. Choose to save the woman or the man, each with their own flaws that would make it hard to decide who to save. But both could be innocent, both could be guilty. One or the other, what do you do? Azrael throws the choice back on White Ghost. If you truly serve a higher power, how can you let an innocent die? I'm putting you to task. I'm giving you the test. I loved how Lane turned this around on him. It was so cool. When both cables are cut, White goes after the accused terrorist who is truly innocent. Azrael saves the girl who turns out to truly cheat on her husband. And it's like... now here's the question, and this is interesting about this issue, made me think afterwards. White Ghost wanted Azrael to feel responsible for his choice. If Azrael chose, would he have let the innocent die to prove a point? Would he have said, you let an innocent person die because of your poor choice? Would White Ghost have done that to make him responsible for his test of character? What do you think?
Yes. I believe he probably would have let that happen, just because of it's the nature of the test. Then it's dealing with the aftermath if he chose poorly.
Right.
And it's that moral and emotional responsibility type deal.
Last book I want to talk about is Warlord. Warlord number 7. I talked about this one on the show.
Yeah.
I enjoy the fantasy aspect of this series so much. I love that it features a man from our world adapting to a very different world. It's what I love about stories like Flash Gordon. Grell has done a great job of using modern storytelling techniques to give us a book that feels classic, yet very current as well. This issue is filled with action and just some gorgeous Grell art. I remember mentioning it on the show because of the fantastic and hysterical job Grell did on hiding the exposed breast of a virgin woman that Morgan rescues. He's without his memory in part of the issue, but it starts to come back, and it's a cool jump-on issue because it gives an overview of Travis's story as he's getting, his memory back. It's an interesting arc where he acts as a protector of this woman. It's worth it for the art alone, but the story is just as cleverly handled. Props to David Curiel on colors and Rob Lee on letters for keeping the mood and tone of this fantasy landscape. And Growl was just like throwing arms and clothes and objects in the way of this girl just so it wasn't revealed, but yet you knew that was out there and exposed and, hey, hi, how are you? But it's just kind of it was very funny as a reader to go through and just see, like, he must have had a blast drawing that. You know, it's you get that kind of vibe when you hear Nicholas Scott and Gail Simone talk about, you know, naked Catman. You get the same thing kind of here with what was going on with Grell, and you just kind of see a lot of people having fun with artwork, and I dug that. It's the same vibe like I got with the Six when they were chatting about Catman. So it's kind of cool to see Grell having some kind of fun too with it. It's a cool issue. It's cool art.
Oh yeah, and it's funny. I found my Warlord action figure that I had as a kid.
Did you really?
I found it. I was actually able to find it, and so I have my.
Did you know who he was as a kid?
At the time, no. I had no. I had the He-Man action figures, and I saw.
Was he part of that series?
No, but his action figure was about the same size as He-Man. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, he'll fit in. And I was at I don't even know, like Woolworths.
I remember the figure.
And I saw it. So I was like, hey, Ma, can I get this? Sure. And just be quiet. I was a chatty little child.
Did you sing that much then?
Yeah, a little bit of singing, a little bit of drumming, a little bit of talking, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I was a little ball of hyper energy, as a little kid, and so if Mom could get me to be quiet, she was happy.
That's funny.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look great neutron.
Jim, what you got for us?
Well, I have, now I went on with writing for events and limited series. And I kept the same dynamics of team dynamic, inner character development, and family dynamic. Now, what I've done in the past Oscars have been, I said within a limited series or an event, it has to end by the year for me to consider it. I threw that rule out, mostly because there's no way I was not going to include Blackest Night in with this, because it's just such a huge event, and so I didn't
have that rule either in mind.
I just completely threw that out. I think probably going forward, it's going to be always my rule that I'm doing now. With the team dynamic, I went with, for the number 3 spot, Final Crisis. Now, it's weird because Final Crisis, you really think it's not a 2009, but it did end in 2009, and when we were talking the 2008, I didn't include it in with any of the stuff considering because it wasn't done yet. So this was something I know I didn't talk about before, and whether people liked it, disagreed it was a significant event that has to just be recognized. And if I didn't recognize it before, I'm recognizing it now because it's got to be mentioned. There's some questions with I don't know about the ending, this and that, but there's still.
Well, what are your feelings about the ending? Well, I mean, as long as we're talking about it, did you like the ending? I mean, are you throwing it? I'm throwing it out there. I really liked the ending. And you don't have to agree with me, but what do you think? I'm curious about that.
I initially liked the ending, and then I started having issues with Final Crisis. As stuff that occurred in Final Crisis, they're working to undo and change around, especially stuff that happened in Countdown. Part of the thing that, some of the countdown to Final Crisis kind of got reversed and dropped, and didn't get connected into.
What's that got to do with? I guess what is being undone? Let's stick to Final Crisis.
Right? No.
What in Final Crisis has been undone?
Well, it's the stuff that Final Crisis undid in the prior stuff that kind of angered me.
Because you said the way you...
Right, and misworded how I said it.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm genuinely trying to understand your point. Because what you originally said was that what's bothering me is the stuff in Final Crisis that's been undone. Right. But you're saying it's the opposite. It's what Final Crisis...
undid.
So that took away from your enjoyment then of Final Crisis?
Yeah, because here's what happened. Initially, it was taking away my enjoyment of Countdown to Final Crisis.
Okay.
And then I was like... Then one day I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, why am I having an issue with Countdown to Final Crisis when it was Final Crisis that changed the stuff that I enjoyed? Oh. So I once again got back to I enjoyed Countdown. I was like, you know what? I really like this. And I listened to some of our episodes where we were talking about Final Crisis. Countdown. And I was like, you know what? I really liked when this was coming out. It was the ending that ruined it, but it wasn't the ending of Countdown. It was Final Crisis that kind of took some stuff away. So there was that kind of was going against me. But even that, though, I really can't take it away from Final Crisis, because as we were reading the story, I was like, yeah, this is kind of a cool story. I was digging, some of the swerves we had with Luthor. We had, now, the whole thing where they brought in the Flash and he didn't really do anything, but now we see why he was brought in, explained later, so that's kind of fixing
and how
some
it plays
stuff.
Into Rebirth.
And how it plays into Rebirth, how it plays into Blackest Night, and so there's all these connections going through that way. I was like, okay, so it's, it's one of those things where I liked it as I was reading it. I kind of started disliking it. And then as I started re-examining, going, you know what? No. Writing-wise, story-wise, taking out other, personal opinions and or, commentary of what is affected, it was a good story. And I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the mystery, and I enjoyed it unfolding and trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and just that whole, okay, what is Final Crisis again? And just the fact that the villains did, win. The bad guys, evil won. Evil succeeded. And it took, the actions of, Superman and the Miracle Machine to kind of reverse the damage that was done. And just all the extra tie-ins that were going on when Final Crisis was going on. I was like, it was a good story. So I have to put it in there. But there was, there's been times where, and it's funny because if I sat down and was sitting there in an argument and discussing with people, someone could very easily sway my opinion on Final Crisis.
Well, I'm going to do it. Because
Yeah.
it was on my list too.
Oh, okay.
So rather than jump into it later, because I didn't put my limited series in order, I started going through a list of notable limited series because there were so many of them that I didn't list every one. I list ones that I had right off the top of my memory. Then I went back and I pulled out the minis and got specific with them. Final Crisis is one of those. It is, first of all, touching on what you said about Countdown to Final Crisis and Final Crisis. I resolved it differently than you in my own head. So I'm not disputing how you resolved it for yourself. For me, my resolution was I'm looking at Countdown to Final Crisis as its own miniseries. I'm looking at Final Crisis as its own miniseries. And they were supposed to connect, and it just didn't. I don't know who to point the finger at on that. I'm not going to ruin my enjoyment of one to, try to validate the other one. It just doesn't... For me, both experiences were very enjoyable for me. They didn't match up. That ticked me off. But like you said, and I'm glad you said it, I liked Countdown. I've never swavered off of that. I wish it had it's funny, if it had gone together all neatly, this would be a very different conversation. But I'm not going to go back and say I disliked Countdown now because it didn't match up nicely. That's the part that ticked me off. But that doesn't ruin 52 weeks of a series for me. So that doesn't take back that. Right. It ruins the ending of that. And so those 52 weeks were very valid. Final Crisis for me, though, and what is working for me is, that's why I got so confused when you said Final Crisis is being undone. I'm like, what are you talking about? Did you read issue 8 of Batman? Batman and Robin? I'm like, being undone. We're just now seeing payoffs from things that were going on in there with the clone Batman and all that stuff. I'm like, woo, Final Crisis, very cool. What it did with Rebirth and right. How we're seeing now that it wasn't just a throwaway that Barry Allen came back and it didn't really need to. Barry's dealing with that too. It's so laid out a universe for the year, and we're still seeing the after effects of what happened in Final Crisis. It just was a cool miniseries. I had to read that series like an upteen amount of times, and I still don't think I totally understand everything that was happening in it. And I like that, though. I don't want every miniseries to be like Final Crisis. I like Blackest Night because it's not. And that's not a knock on either. It's like, I like that it's fresh. This is Grant Morrison's thing. This is Jeff Johns' thing. And I like that it's a compliment to both writers that you read a Grant Morrison event, you're going to get one flavor. You read a Jeff Johns event, you're going to get a very different flavor. I dig that. That's cool. And, I hope to read a Gail Simone event to see what she does and get her flavor on take on things. I just think, Greg Rucka, when he does stuff, Greg Rucka was a part of Final Crisis, and he's part of Blackest Night. He's part of all this crazy stuff. And yet he has his own take on these events. I like that about, seeing different writers and the way that they handle these events. But Final Crisis, to me, the validity of it, the stamp of it as a Batman fan and a Batman mark. Ooh, issue 8 of when I'm like, yes! Nothing is thrown out the window. It all makes sense. It's all there. I do agree with you, though, that the issue is how they linked up. But that, you know what? That link up didn't happen in 2009. So we can throw a countdown out the window for our 2009 discussion. So that'll be my argument for it. Countdown was not a 2009 miniseries, so it's not valid in your justification for Final Crisis.
Hey, Final Crisis got the number 3 spot.
I am completely teasing, and it's a very valid spot for it. So go ahead, please continue.
Well, my number 2 spot is World of New Krypton. Okay. Robinson, Rucka, and this was one of those that could have fit in any of the categories for me, because really you had some great individual development with Clark and Kara getting used to the Kryptonian lifestyle, and as well as the growth of the other Kryptonians they're dealing with. You start to understand who is the Red Shard. You start seeing some cool stuff with General Zod, with the other council members, just the various intrigue and cultural references. Family end of it. Not even just blood family, but that Kryptonian family, who they are, what they're about, what is it to be a Kryptonian. So all these different categories came together, and I loved seeing and reading just how dealing with where the entire cast is a planet. It's not just one team of 20 people or one team of 5. It's a planet is your cast of characters. And just their usage of the different guilds, using the different characters, introducing a character, running them through the series, maybe killing off a couple, letting a couple live, let you wonder when everything is settled and done, said and done with New Krypton, what is going to happen to these people that we're getting to know, we're getting to understand. And great ending of the series, even though that happened in 2010.
Right.
So, but it was just a really cool spot. And it's funny, if it wasn't for Blackest Night, World of New Krypton would have won this hands down Oscar without even me batting an eye, because I jumped on it and I loved it. But
I have another one for that particular slot.
Really, because for me, my Oscar went to Blackest Night.
Okay.
Because
I think you're forgetting something, but we'll talk about it in a second.
Okay. It's we've gushed about Blackest Night. We've talked about just how an event it is, where it's affecting across all of the universes. It's not just the Green Lantern universe. We saw how it affected, the Bat universe, how it affected Titans, how it's affecting JSA, where Wonder Woman, every hero across the DCU, even out in Rebels, out in space, how they had an effect with it. It was just this massive event that I love the build-up they're getting from the other pieces, but they're not losing the separate side event story arc. This is, for me, how I want an event to roll out. This is what a DC event should be to me.
All right, when I did my miniseries, I did a top 5 as well, and I have some other minis that are notable. My number 5 was Flash Rebirth, particularly issue number 5. I did single out issues where possible. A Flash's weakness isn't kryptonite or the color yellow. It's the one thing we have to do to escape solidarity. We have to slow down. That was the key focus of this issue, showing the need for family and friends and the interconnectivity of the Flash family. This issue honored every Flash fan, no matter if you were a Barry, Wally, Bart fan. It brought in the legacy of Johnny Quick, it reconnected us with Max Mercury, reminded us that there was a Flash legacy steeped in the past, present, and future. And independently of all Flashes, they're all awesome independently, but together they become something so much more. Going into this, I was worried about the potential costume change for Wally. I was so glad that it built on the classic. I like the look for Jessie Quick, but I have become really attached to her Liberty Bell look as well as the classic All-Star Squadron. I love that her rich family history is a source for her various looks. Time travel and the ability for villains to use time to change and disrupt history is such a cool concept. I love that this is a race against time to prevent what happened to Barry's mother from happening to Iris. This issue is filled with hope, and so appropriate that we see it from him in Blackest Night now. This felt like an issue that connects Barry from the past of Rebirth to now in Blackest Night. And I really liked him, which is a great switch from how disconnected he was in the beginning, and it's been a great journey in this series. Delays don't bother me when the quality is this high. Would I prefer it on time? I want to clarify that. Absolutely. But the artwork is stunningly sharp. It's a good-looking book. It's very satisfying. You know, it's one of those things where are they going to probably take a look at how they schedule books with this creative team in the future? Sure. You know, let's give the time to make sure we get it done. But, is this going to look good in a collected edition? It's a great, great book. And that is a hard thing because I see both sides of that where people get a little annoyed. But it's so good. That issue 5, that's the one that put me over the top. On Rebirth, where I was enjoying it before, but I wasn't 100% sold, 5 made me giddy. My number 4 series was Final Crisis. We were just talking about that. Fantastic series. Number 3 for me was Superman World of New Krypton. And I picked out issue number 1. I really liked this way this mini kicked off, showing us that it was going to be about us journeying with Clark to learn about the various guilds and inequalities of Kryptonian culture. I think it's always interesting when art imitates life. Robinson, Rucka, Woods, Brad Anderson, Steve Wands on letters, Gary Frank on covers. Create an exploration of Kryptonian culture where we learn as Superman does. I really felt for the Labor Guild in this issue. I wanted to be Superman's buddy like Tyr was, the Gilligan to his Skipper. It was great to see Superman's years of experience paid off in battles against those of equal strength. It was important on the first issue to sell the reader on a concept. It was risky, but man, have I been enjoying this ride. Great choice to show us what is admirable about Zod, while not losing the feeling he can't be trusted. The development of Allura and how tragedy hardened her, just very interesting to me. Number 2, Wednesday's Comics. The Metamorpho games, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Supergirl, Adam Strange, Metal Men, I could go on. It was just such a fantastic series. And this is the one I think you were forgetting about, because it just reminds you that comics are about experimentation. I'm definitely getting the collected edition of this because I will read it again and again and again. This is what I enjoy about the weeklies, trying something different each time to get people talking and coming back to comics. Keep experimenting, DC. The creative teams involved in this book, all 12 issues of this, I just non-stop joy to read. And this was one, when you were saying, I'm like, I know he's forgetting about this one.
I forgot about it, yeah.
Because it was is that good?
Yeah, and you know what I'm going to say, ditto, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Number 1, Blackest Night, number 5. Bruce Wayne, in quotations, coming back was the key for me. And this goes back to what I liked about Final Crisis, too. How these both, the events in this one, the events in Final Crisis, all this is paying off in Batman issue 8. It shows how well Johns tries to understand how characters are working elsewhere. This got me excited for things we are currently seeing in the Batman mystery, and gave us the first real clues that the body was never Bruce's. It also served as a great way to lead us to the reveal that Necron is responsible for the revolving door of life and death in the DC universe. A comic fandom debate across comics for the ages. Does death really matter? Yeah! We are seeing a story that shows a great writer can listen to the audience and build a debate into a mini-series that has us all talking, excited, and chomping at the bit to see how it ends. Blackest Night has done nothing but deliver thrills and great storytelling. It made me a believer in Barry Allen and reminded me what is so unique about his friendship with Hal. It's so different than Ollie, and it made them feel more human because real friendships are like that. No two friends offer the same thing to each other, and there's something powerful about and valid about each of those strong and true friendships. It's books like this that get me excited for what comes next. He made me love Mira, almost and maybe even more than Aquaman. I am so curious for what's going to be happening with Brightest Day, and this isn't even done yet. Just such a cool series, but quote-unquote Bruce Wayne. I love that. And we're not even talking about the fact that all those heroes then die. Really cool stuff. I was into this. So, I'm with you 100%. Yeah. Blackest Night, top spot. Just, and it's the Blackest Night experience, but issue 5 was the one for me if I had to pick and I tried so hard. And I didn't succeed in every category, but I tried with every single comic I could to pick out a single issue because I knew that would be harder for me, and I was pushing myself.
And now with me on limited series on the writing for an individual character, character development, and this was an interesting one because I went with Final Crisis Aftermath run, for the number 3 spot. This was one of the reasons that Matthew Sturgis did a great job with taking this, Fire Weasel and just building the character and just throwing him in the adventure. And you had that scrambling, just keep going. And he would have been higher in my hierarchy, but he is a villain. And I really wanted to see him suffer in the end. But that passionate response, is again a sign of great writing that I really hated this guy. And I was so glad with how it ended. I said when we were talking about it before, I kind of wanted to see, the Blackest Night, Martian Manhunter, Blackest Night Martian, go after him and take him down. But I'm glad the way they chose to end it, because that just so fit. The character, and it was just a very fitting ending to him, because I'm not spoiling, because I'm not, just in case someone didn't read it, like, hey, how did that end? Pick it up and read it. It is a great series. It was a fun read, and, beautiful artwork, of course, and just, it was that scramble at just what is he going to deal with next? Just as everything looks good for Mike, he makes bad choices. He is true to his character as he is a weasel and a little that you want to see these horrific.
He's a little what?
Little
Okay.
I'm keeping this clean.
You are. You're keeping it real.
Yeah, but I'm keeping Now,
this actually, I want to say something about this one. This made my notable. I have a list of, outside of my top 5, of notable miniseries. And I didn't go through every miniseries that was released in the year. I figured, for this category, let me just go through. And I went really off the top of my head, which ones stuck with me? And it was hard because there were ones that I genuinely said, okay, was this released this year? Did it work? For the same reason you were just saying. Final Crisis Aftermath run. I was surprised at how enjoyable of all the Final Crisis Aftermath series this was. I was like Human Flame, really, but this is totally due to Williams II and Sturgis and the whole team having a fun ride with this Z-list villain, the Human Flame. The art and jokes throughout made this just a blast for me. Ink was a close second, but Run stands out as my personal favorite, and it really was just all the supporting cast, the characters brought in, Condiment King, everybody else. I mean, it's just such a great ride, and it was fun. And it just, the creative team was having a good time with it, and it's a great example of how you can have fun with a book. You can let your readership have fun with a book without going too far. Kudos to them for doing it, because I had a good time reading it, and it was a beautiful book, and it just was a great ride in a book that I was the least interested in when I heard about the announcements of it until I heard the creative team. And that really is an example of where I was the most excited about it when I heard about the creative team.
Yeah.
So they turned me around completely on a concept like, Human Flame, you're going to sell me on this one? Yeah, if you give me these guys doing it.
Well, it's funny because you want my number 2 spot in the character development writing was Final Crisis Aftermath Inc.
Wow.
Eric Wallace, he did just this great job with Tattoo Man. And this is one of those things where I liked how they tied in from what was used in Final Crisis for a character, and they kept that going. And I was like, okay, this is kind of the stuff I would want to see coming out of a massive event, where they took the events of that, continued on the character, gave us a little bit more information about, more background on him, developed the character a little bit more, and it got me even thinking beyond the pages. If you remember when we were talking about Ink, I started thinking monthly series, a year from now, him changing his name to Ink, and just becoming his own hero, and not, throwing away his connection to Tattoo Man, who was a villain, and becoming his own, into his own. I was thinking, he team up with JLA, because he had the honorary membership. But I was actually really thinking he would be outstanding in The Outsiders. Him and Black Lightning, had that great rapport.
I actually like that.
Continuing it on.
That fits where he went, actually.
And Black Lightning could be that continuing mentor position, but not the quote-unquote mentor, because, Mark really wouldn't take that kind of, I'm no one's sidekick. No, you're my partner here. That kind of deal, interaction between the two of them, that mutual respect that, hey, it goes both ways. We got to respect each other, and kind of like seeing just the hero that is inside him coming out. And it was that excitement that I wanted to see more out of him that put that same enjoyment into the series. And this is one of those guys that I'm really sad to see. We probably won't see him again, because
Did you not read the ending of this miniseries?
I read the ending
with Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Where do you think he's going to wind up? You do know Eric Wallace is writing Titans, right? And that Deathstroke's leading the team.
I did not know Eric Wallace was writing Titans.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
This guy's going to Titans.
Oh, okay, cool.
This is a lead-in. This is a direct lead-in. This is on my... Actually, I was only going to pick... this is on my list of
forget
notable...
my last comment that I made.
This is my list of notable miniseries because of the fact that I wasn't going to put more than one Final Crisis Aftermath series, because I'm like, it'd be kind of fun just to pick my favorite, because I enjoyed the whole Aftermath experience, but it really was Run that was the pinnacle. But this was my close second, and I'll tell you why. How do you deal with discovering the tattoos on your body are responding to various facets of your personality? We all have good and bad qualities. What happens when your subconscious allows some of those to manifest themselves in ways that cause a danger to yourself, your reputation, and ultimately your family? How do you gain control of that? How do you accept that that's part of you? Tattooed Man takes the fall for his son. And by the way, please notice that his name is still in fact Tattooed Man in the upcoming Titan solicits, Jim, and not Ink. But ultimately, find out that he himself is guilty of murder. Could you walk away from your family? I'm just teasing. Could you walk away from your family knowing that you were a danger to them? His wife stood by him through so much, but what happens now? I am glad this character is going to be on the Titans. The battle with his returning brother, his coming to terms with controlling of his powers, his ownership of his own mistakes, and finding a new and unique way to deal with the problems in the darkest places of his town set up for Deathstroke's team, which I did not see coming, but it was a nice build to a new status quo for this character. And I am so glad that we didn't see a direct villain turn, but instead an interesting gray area with him still trying to fight the good fight in a new and unique way. And that was something with this series. I'm like, it was cool because I would have been very disappointed had he wound up a villain at the end. That would have really, not disappointed, I would have been ticked off. Instead, we find a character who, through circumstances of his powers and the surroundings around him, is left to look at his role in a very different way. And that leads him to where he's going to be for Titans, which I find so interesting. Sweet. And that's why when you were talking about Outsiders, to add some validity to what I really enjoyed about your commentary, Jim, I agree with you that Outsiders is the kind of a team that would work for him too, with where he's at the end of this, because the way this Titans book sounds like it's going to be, it's characters kind of like that in the darker edges of the DC universe that I think is going to be an interesting exploration for him. And I'm glad to see them doing something interesting with Titans, because that's a book that I want to see them get the ball rolling on. And it's Eric Wallace. I'm almost 100% positive it's Eric Wallace that's doing the writing on this. And I know Deathstroke's leading the team. I know Tattooed Man's on it.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's where he's going to be. So, but it fits very much your thinking about Outsiders, and that's where this character belongs. So you're really in sync with where this character's going, and that's very, very cool.
Okay, neat. I'm happy. I'm in a good mood.
Yeah.
Well, I was in a good mood before, but let's add to it. Now, my Oscar for individual character development, there's 2 titles that I gave it to, and I really gave it to 2 titles because they're written by the same person.
Okay.
And it was the character development of the same person in both titles that really triggered it for me. And I'm going with Flash Rebirth and Blackest Night. The whole Barry Allen growth in both the 2 titles just really hit home for me. And it was funny because one of the times when we were talking about Blackest Night, I was saying, classic Barry Allen. I don't know classic Barry Allen, but I got a feeling from it just from these 2 titles. I learned who Barry Allen is, but it wasn't just Barry Allen. It was Mira. It was, I'm a Ryan Choi guy, but, Ray Palmer is looking really cool guy. So these are just these great developments of these characters that has to get some recognition, and we've gushed about them enough that people, I don't think anyone will be surprised by this, but it was some really cool oh my god moments came out of these 2 titles, and they were with those characters where you're just like, yeah, that's what it is to be a hero. That's what it means to be. And I was like, hoorah.
I want to take like some of that that thin like plastic that'll stick to the bottom of your shoes or something like that, and make a Ray Palmer to put on so you can walk on them. And then I want a little Ryan Choi action figure I can carry along. No, I'm with you. I'm digging Ray Palmer in a way that I didn't expect because I've been such a Ryan Choi fan. Ray's been fantastic, so it's been fun. I just want more Ryan Choi.
Yes.
So
I don't want to lose one when I get the other. I want them both. I'm greedy.
I had some other notable miniseries that I thought were really. Oh, do you have?
I got my family dynamics.
Oh, go with your family dynamic.
Family dynamics of limited series, and this was once again, there's a lot of different stuff out there, but the first one I went with was Blackest Night Superman.
Nice.
It was not only just a cool Superman story, this was a Superman family story. And a lot of these Blackest Night tales, they really tug at the heartstrings. But this one, we got to see the team, all of them working together. There was those cool Ma Kent moments, Crypto moments, Superboy, Superman.
Ma Kent was my single favorite moment in that. Because when she stood up and was ready to...
I'm a Kansas farmer.
Yeah,
I'm the wife of a Kansas farmer.
That was cool.
Boom, sets the field on fire.
Yeah.
I was like, hoorah, Ma Kent.
Yeah.
And she's going up against some supernatural power with nothing. And she still stood up.
My wife's parents are both farmers. They've got a farm out in Ashtabula. And the two of them, her mom gets out there and she's in the middle of it all. So, when I saw it with Ma Kent, I'm like, no, that's real. We're not gonna, kick back. She doesn't sit around and twiddle her thumbs or anything and whittle. She gets. She does that kind of stuff, but she gets out there. She's in the middle of it with tackling cows and stuff like that. It's like crazy. So I very much see her doing that kind of thing. It's cool. So it's yeah.
I see her tackling cows. Does she put a football helmet on? And sticks them.
And they're not her cows. They're other people's cows. No, I'm kidding. Just random cows. I'm
reminded of the movie Michael, starring John Travolta, where he was Michael the Archangel, and he charges the bull. Battle! I just see Mariah's mom doing that.
Yeah.
Even though I don't,
she doesn't really tackle cows, but they're in the nitty gritty with animals and doing things that I'm like, wow, that's really impressive to me. So
another one, of course, is Battle for the Cowl. Tony Daniel. That was just it. It was the lead-in for my just love of Dick Grayson becoming Batman, and it was just a great setup. And the book ended, with the Fabian Nicieza stuff as well, the Oracle story thrown in there as well. Just all these different Battle for the Cowl issues that were connections and tie-ins to the overall event that was Battle for Cowl. That was a great, and as I said, it was a great family feel because this is the Bat family. They went through the stages of death. They mourned him. They were angry. They dealt with it. And then they came to terms with it. And then they became, did what they had to. It was the cool moments where Tim put on the cowl for a little bit just because there needed to be a Batman presence. And, with the dealings with the last will and testaments from Bruce's, and just all this different stuff going on. I was like, what? This was a really cool beginning of the return of, the rebirth, Batman Rebirth, kind of, even though they didn't call it Rebirth, but it was the return of Batman.
Well, they call it Batman Reborn.
Right.
Yeah, so, that's the whole tagline after the fact.
Yeah.
Battle for the Cowl, it was interesting. And it's a credit to Tony Daniel, because I think it's very hard to do what he did. Because it's obvious that the concept was to drop Dick Grayson into place as Batman. And, Grant Morrison in interviews has talked about how he was a fan of just kind of... And that's what I loved so much about Batman and Robin issue 1. It dropped them into that and just kicked off running. So that worked for me, and that made it my number one solo book. It was funny to talk about that and just how that worked, but then... to then try and go back and create a story that bridges all that. And it's a testament to what Daniel did leading into what Winnick did, because I think all of that put together worked for me. And so Battle for the Cowl, I don't really take that as an isolated thing. I agree with you. It's all of the outside stuff, the one-shots and the Oracle series and all that. It all kind of came together for a neat little package that worked with Winnick's bridging as well. Because I really feel like Winnick's story then led into the stuff that we saw afterwards. So I give him a lot of credit for doing that, because it's stories that I wanted to read. And I think it's hard, though, to go and create something when the intention was different, to just kind of drop him into that. And that's not to say there was anything wrong with just dropping him into that, because it worked in Batman and Robin. It really did. That's brilliant. It's really good. But I'm glad they told the story, because I wanted to see it and I wanted to go on the ride, and I think it's a hard thing to do, to go and create that kind of story and kind of craft it, and because obviously you have to have a Jason Todd kind of line up with where he's going to wind up in that book. So you're under a lot of pressure to put characters in places. It's what Nicieza and Williams had to do in Robin. You have to line up characters into a place that does them justice for where they are going. And the Batman universe did a very good job with this. And it's exciting. I'm so giddy as a Batman fan with how cool and fun Batman is right now.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah, I agree. My Oscar, though, went to Blackest Night Titans. J.T. Krull. Dude, it was funny because this is in the family dynamics. And normally I don't think of Titans as family. I do think of them as a team. I know, and you're looking at me giving me that weird look, huh? They are...
Although we read different...
Right.
We started at different Titans, yeah.
And so I now see in this Titans team really showed me the family behind it. It wasn't just the emotional response to them dealing with seeing the dead family and friends. It was their teammates' emotional response towards their other members. Them seeing how they, Donna dealing with all the issues, with Garth dealing with Tara, and just the other members of their team have their emotional response for what they were going through. And that for me was a big just tug at the heartstrings, because I started thinking how if I was on that team, if I was part of them, if I was one of their friends, one of their family. And it just really had that tight family unit, and that it was something that even right through and right at that ending where they're all ready to rock and roll, going, okay, it's time, let's do this. We got Titans together, let's do this. And I was just like, yeah, so definitely.
Blackest Night Titans did make my notable miniseries list. Totally engaged in the Donna Troy in this mini. Having her husband and son brought back before, and how their memories will haunt and tarnish her from the original memories, and then just really kind of shatter some of that stuff. J.T. Krull is batting very high for me with Titan storytelling. I love the handling of Hawk and Dove and the reveals of Dove as an agent of order and what it means for the Black Lanterns. I really like Tara's use in this series and how it felt natural when compared with what was done later with her in The Outsiders. There was some great consistency. Out of the initial minis, this was my favorite. I do want to notice the Blackest Night Batman miniseries. I enjoyed that miniseries a great deal. What really stood out for me is the writing was good, and it was a good, solid miniseries. The artwork was breathtaking in that series. I was like, whoa, who was this, and where did this come from, and how cool is that? Also introduced that concept of cold, working, and shutting down emotions in a different way. How the cold shielded the emotions because you were so frozen that you were in like a suspended animation of sorts where they couldn't lock onto you. And I love that it was heroes experimenting to try and find out what would work against this dire situation. What were they dealing with? That was what worked in the initial 3 miniseries for me, because a lot of the criticism came up with they didn't really move it forward a lot. Yes, they did, in the sense that the heroes were in a state where they were playing around with figuring out what was going on and what would work. Because it was very early in Blackest Night, and it did mirror that we didn't quite know yet what would work on these characters or not. We were learning along with these heroes, and I liked seeing that experimentation. And each of those 3 minis handled it very differently, and showed us something very different with those characters. I thought that was cool. It was just kind of an interesting show, and I loved that you didn't have to read any of those 3.
Right. You
could read the main mini. If you were just kind of like, you know what, I just want to read the Blackest Night mini, I'm not missing out on anything. Those of us that did got a little bit of a different glimpse into the whole thing, but we still wound up at the same story. And all the key bits were thrown into the Blackest Night mini for everyone to be kind of brought on board with. So cool expanded storytelling. I also want to talk about the Oracle series, because this was the Battle of the Cowl miniseries that I was most excited about. I really wanted to see how Oracle would fit into the post-Battle for the Cowl world. Birds of Prey being canceled was a huge blow for me. I loved that book. Oracle is a character that needs some prominency in the DC Universe, and always should have prominency in the DC Universe. It's great to see her relationship with her father so well handled, but also seeing her make creative use of some of the limitations of her Gotham apartment. Dealing with a war in cyberspace and a killing spree really shows us what this character is made of. I've been enjoying her immensely in Batgirl, but I'm so glad this mini focused on her and launched into that versus the other way around. To me, she's a top-tier character. you can't get more iconic than the original Batgirl. That's, who doesn't know Batgirl? That's a character. You mentioned Supergirl, you mentioned Wonder Woman, you mentioned the original Batgirl. These are characters that universally, even if people don't know a whole lot about them, they're aware of them. They're aware of the concept at least, and that's something. It's Barbara Gordon, baby. It's Barbara Gordon, and she's coming back in Birds of Prey, and I'm so giddy for that. Do you have anything else miniseries-wise? Because I have a whole bunch of stuff to chat about. I don't want to cut you off.
No. Well, I have the, when I go into my artwork.
Okay, we'll get to that when we get you our artwork. Superman's Secret Origin, Jeff Johns, Gary Frank. It's an interesting task to take all of the great origins that have come before from all aspects of media and to try and bring it together in a way that gives us an origin that feels fresh yet iconic. The art feels like it's out of the film, and I like that. Yet they pull from classic Legion stories and give us some new takes on the first time in the costume. I love that Clark wasn't totally comfortable with it at first. It's hard to be one of the first out of the starting gate and not to stick to the shadows, which, is very different from like what a Batman does and all that type of thing, and to be that bright and vibrant and something that does kind of look a little awkward when you see it at first like that. That's kind of cool, and I enjoyed it and found the series just incredibly engaging. I don't have a favorite issue on it so far, because every time a new one comes out, I'm like, ooh, this is fun. That's my favorite,
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting. And it's been just consistent and just gorgeous, and it's something that I'm probably going to buy collected when it's done because of how much of a perfect ride it is all the way through. The Mighty. This is one that it was a notable miniseries for me that I really enjoyed when it wrapped up this year. What happens when Superman has plans of his own that ultimately are self-serving? What happens when Superman sets up crimes as a way to promote himself? What if his idea of a better world doesn't match those of humanity? Is it okay to force genetic alteration and death as a way to improve society or culture? This touched on some real interesting issues in a truly unique and interesting exploration of what makes a superhero. Alpha starts out like a typical Superman, but turns out to be the farthest thing from it when he kills those closest to him for finding out his secret plans for humanity, because he thinks it's best. Cole was a very cool sidekick who learns how to be something more. I get the feeling that there was much more planned with this mini, had it sold better, meaning that this was going to continue on and there's going to be other minis that were going to spin out of this one. I would have liked to have seen more from this world. I feel that this one got lost a bit in the shuffle of all the things that were being released. I truly enjoyed this and recommend you pick up and trade if you didn't get a chance to check this one out, because it's really something where it focuses on how superpowers and coming from an alien culture doesn't necessarily mean that you should take the hero at face value. It was a very cool 12-issue epic. I like how it played out. The pacing was great. And it just was a cool series, and I really wanted to note this one because it's a mini-series that I truly enjoyed this year that I think is one that should have gotten, a little bit more notice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got a co-sign on that. That was a fun read. It was a good ride. I enjoyed it. We throw around the term palate cleanser. It was definitely one of those for me.
Yeah.
Even though it was still a superhero movie, superhero series, it had a little bit of a different twist to it.
Fresh.
It was fresh.
It's funny. I'm reading. I'm really enjoying from Boom, Mark Waid's Irredeemable, and I enjoyed it so much. I picked up the first trade of it, and it's a different kind of exploration, again, of that Superman archetype. And it's funny how The Mighty is such a unique experience, yet Irredeemable is such a unique experience, and it's all these explorations. It just shows that you can take characters of a Superman archetype and really tell a lot of different kinds of stories with it. And you can explore all kinds of different ends of good and evil and how these characters react. Irredeemable, on the surface, if you talk about the concepts, like, well, they sound kind of similar. They are so different, and it's so cool to see how different that they really are, and Irredeemable's another one. I know it's not DC. I just kind of want to recommend it to people out there. If you like The Mighty, read Irredeemable. Very different, but just as cool. It's another cool miniseries that's out there. Or not miniseries, regular ongoing series that's out there. Batman Widening Gyre, number 3. This was the issue that just really stood out for me in this series. It was funny. I enjoyed issue 1, but it was 2 and 3 that really got me kicking on this book.
Yeah.
From the opening with Stirk to the rescue by Robin, we see Batman's world is pretty overwhelming. Bruce is known as Dee, and I love that this mini's exploring the relationship with Silver St. Cloud. It's always fun to see Bruce in different moods. I loved Hush for its exploration of Catwoman and Bruce, and this shows another side of him as well. How do you maintain relationships when you have set yourself up as two different people? Do those two different worlds lead to two different sets of needs? The art is sharp here with expensive cars and exotic villas. It reminds me of how James Bond Batman can be at times. It's further proof that there's a ton of variety to Batman stories. It goes from dark and mysterious to bright and sexy on the fly. Kudos to Flanagan, T-Bear, Lyon for delivering just great visuals to Smith's script. This would be a cool film. My understanding is that this is the first of two 6-issue minis, and I can't wait for more.
Oh, cool.
Can I just say yum to Sienkiewicz covers? Especially on this issue number 3. It's that sexy leg on the with Batman in the back. Just oof. Aquaman and the cool beach moments with Bruce Wayne and the battle scars. Fun, moving, intense. Who is Goat Boy? I love this mystery. I want to see what Silver's really up to. I have a feeling she's trying to give Bruce an out as Batman. That's just my hypothesis. So they can have a life together. Because she's doing too many kooky things that just lead me to believe she's somehow involved in all these crazy shenanigans.
Going on,
Right or wrong, though, whether I'm right or wrong, I can be, it's another one, great example. We talked about Green Lantern Corps, where they swerved me there. If they swerved me here, I'm invested in this series. It's a great book. And I just, issue 2 and 3 especially, but 3 was the one. I was like, this was fun. And just a great exploration of Bruce in and out of the costume, and just a human piece with that one. Continuing on about minis, Justice League Cry for Justice number 5. This is one of those books, it's been interesting how it's very dark. Prometheus returning to prominence was the highlight of this very dark mini. I have to admit that this mini made me uncomfortable with its choices on how to explore these characters. I applaud the choice to have Robinson connect with fans on a personal level as he discussed his love for each character and his background with them. It gave me confidence that he was heading somewhere with this interesting exploration. I am glad he's getting a chance to launch this run into JLA, so we get to see him take these characters out of the darkness into the light. I think knowing that this will pay off into a new team that is more cohesive added some points for me. I'm not sure my enthusiasm would be the same otherwise. I think a dark exploration like this needs to be balanced with growth afterwards, and I think that this is a ton of basis from this mini being important to me. Because in particular, this issue, I've been torn over this, but this was the issue where it started to come together. And I do love that what looked like an art mistake and a script error actually catching us on the fly with that whole little Shazam was there and he was supposed to be because he was infiltrating. That's why. Where did he come from? Well, that's where did he come from? He popped in there because, and I think that's why you need to see a whole mini to ultimately judge it. Because the mini's meant to be read as a whole. It's meant to be, this is a 6-issue arc. It's meant to be or it's more than 6 issues. It's meant to be just this big overarching story that's meant to kind of come together. It's a lot of my enjoyment of this, though, and it was a good choice when you're going to do something. I think this is a ballsy series. I think it's a risky series, too, because I know it angered a lot of people. I know a lot of people loved it. People kind of fell in the middle. They turned me into loving this series as it went along. What kept me on board through the ride, though, because it was a bumpy ride along the way for me because of my discomfort at what was being done with the characters, is the connection with the author in the back. It was a good move. You can't do that on every miniseries, but you needed in this one to do that. Len Wein with his origins and having Robinson talk about those and what these characters mean to him. It was a good move on this one because you needed something to kind of keep the fans kind of connected with this author and that he's heading somewhere. And it's great now because we're seeing that payoff in the main book with that initial issue with them. But that was, again, that's a 2010 release. But it is something where he kept me going all the way through with those pieces. And I'm glad that was a part of the issue. I felt like they were bonus materials, director's cut materials, but I ate them up. And it was something that I thought made this miniseries special.
It's funny because when you talk about the with Cry for Justice, that darkness to it, that was the thing that kept it out of my top 3. It was a great story, and it was one of those things where I agree completely with you. It wasn't until the final issues, well, not the final, but the number 5, that I really got behind this, saying, okay, this is going to go somewhere. And that same thing where you said they're coming out of the darkness into light, where it's leading to somewhere in with the new monthly JLA series. I got to completely echo you on those sentiments. But one of the things I was doing was when I was reading through that, I read it through a second time without going to that back of the book, just purely on the story that was told, because I found when I did it on the first one, it did kind of, it changed. I don't want to say it changed the way you said it changed. How you're like, okay, it made me, made you a little bit more comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. And I still wanted to hold on to that discomfort when I was reading it. So I recently just went back and read, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I wanted the story itself to see how I felt with that. I read it for 1, and I started wait, you know what? And it was just something weird I was just doing in my head where I wasn't reading the back stuff at the end. I was just reading the story, And it was, something that, I'm glad that I just focused on the story and not on the side of things, but I'm glad I did get that. If that makes sense?
It does make sense. Okay, yeah, I get what you're going.
Sometimes it makes perfect sense in my head what I'm saying, but what actually comes out is...
No, I get where you're going with that. That's interesting. It's because you had a very different experience in how you approached it.
Yeah, but it's funny because we did get the same kind of ending where by issue 5, after multiple read-throughs and looking...
Was that the changing point for you?
Oh, definitely. 5 was a changing point, and it's also just looking at the JLA stuff where we're seeing where the team's going to, what it's going to be. I saw that the end of the Green Arrow Black Canary where you see that tied directly into it. It just there's a lot of I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
All of it coming together.
Yeah, all of it's once all the pieces are coming together, and there's still the story isn't done yet. Because I was thinking about that, with...
I don't get another issue.
Yeah. And at first I was thinking, okay, they kind of spoiled the ending. We know how it ends now.
But we don't.
I know there's still one more twist, one more swerve that we don't see coming.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking forward to.
World's Finest number 3. This has been an interesting series for me because I've been enjoying it. I haven't been through the roof, but it's been an enjoyable read. It was what I expected. It was going to be like kind of a fun mini-series that kind of showed us the first meetings of all these characters. I didn't expect it to be other than, just an entertaining kind of fun piece that would do that. Issue number 3, though, whoa, this series really popped for me in this issue. Jamal Liegel really connects with Sterling Gates. I love them together on Supergirl, and it was so appropriate to have him on this issue with Supergirl and Batgirl. Barbara and Kara, not Karen, used to have a relationship before Crisis. This is a reimagining of that friendship with Stephanie Brown and the new Kara, and I love the two of them bonding over training with Bruce. It showed how much they have in common. Catwoman made for great comic relief, reminded us that she remains kind of a gray area to most of the hero community. Bruce has a trust and relationship with her, but that doesn't necessarily extend to Supergirl and Batgirl. Facial expression tells a great deal in the story, and the bit where Kara is cut by the toy dinosaur, and we see the awe and confusion on her face as we learn about the kryptonite involvement, just really worked, and it was just a great commendation to great art choices. I've been, like I said, I don't want to say mixed on this mini, but it's just been a fun kind of, it's fun, but... Gates, Eigel, Purcell, Sabal, High Five, Fletcher really understand how to make these characters interesting and fun, and this issue in particular popped for me, which was something, the series has been an enjoyable ride, but that was the one that just kind of, whoa, where did you come from? And it just looked great, played great, it was just a great story within that one. Last Days of Animal Man. This 6-issue mini is an Elseworld story of sorts. Animal Man is having issues with his powers. They are becoming more and more untrustworthy. It is becoming clear that he'll have to retire. I don't have a favorite issue on this one per se, but the whole mini is of note because it builds to this great understanding that there was never really a separation between Animal Man and Buddy. It was something he brought about because he was constantly trying to resolve his family life with his superhero life. I loved his wife and kids in this. They were so supportive and proud of him being who he is. I also loved that the ending wrapped up with the death of Animal Man, and he had a role of monitor duty with the League of Titans. He could never give up that part of his life. I find Buddy such a cool, well-written character at times because he's accessible with insecurities about his costume and gimmick and the role in the superhuman community. It's something like we all kind of look at, well, it's kind of darky a bit, but he sees himself that way as a C-lister, and somehow that makes him even more heroic. He is a hero because he wants to help others. He likes being a hero, and there's something very cool about that, just liking it. Conway, Batista, Fosher, Mike, and it's Itiyeah on colors. the whole creative team here really delivered something that is fun, classic, and it felt like hanging out with a friend. If you missed this, it's a journey worth taking, and I can't argue with those Brian Boland covers either, because that's a good-looking book. One other series, Jim, I got a couple more that I want to chat about, but Trinity number 52. Talk about a series that introduced us to the cool use of the co-feature, because that really spun out of all this. The whole series stood out for me for having very consistent art, and much of this was due to the great mesh of pencilers, inkers, and colorists that understood the vision and direction of Busiek and Nicieza. Not only did it tell a pretty ambitious contained story, but the events of this maxi created Earth 1, which we will begin to see this year at the end with Batman and Superman featured. It's something where the series was just a great ride and a joy all the way through. We talked about it on the show, but it is one of those books that it's notable because of not only did it wrap up with an amazing, fun story, but it does have something that introduced something unexpected, I think, for all of us, that it was going to pay off in a way. It's our first appearance of Earth 1. This is a book that you and I wanted to talk about. We never got around to. Red Tornado.
Yeah.
This one just wrapped up, but the first 4 took place in 2009. It's kind of funny how I connected with this mini with being adopted. I have 110 respect for a variety of options when you are adopted. My brother chose to meet his birth mother and grandmother. I chose not to. Not because I'm bitter or angry. At this stage I'm pushing 40 and I'm secure in myself and my family. I just don't have any urge to start a new one. But I'm thankful for the decision was made to have me and allow me for this opportunity. Now, I do have to wonder if part of myself isn't worried my relatives are like Red Volcano and that my father is Dr. Tomorrow. But this is an interesting...
That would explain some stuff.
It definitely would explain some stuff. This is an interesting story because Reddy finds out he has other elementals like himself out there. This is a chance to connect with that family, but he quickly finds out that they aren't like him due to different experiences. I love stories like this because we get to see the hero continue a journey that he's been going on his whole life and to ultimately, at the end, find out that it was the hero's friends, family, and experiences in his development that led him to where he's at now. Red Inferno was the most interesting. Volcano manipulated his humanity, while Red Torpedo only knew betrayal at the hands of Tomorrow and the aggressive nature that Tomorrow set her on. It was cool to see all 4 robots were unique, which shows that these are true AIs, and something is more because they learn and grow from their experiences. Tomorrow harnessed something hard to label in these elementals, so I don't even know if AI is a strong enough word for them. I hope we'll see more Red Tornado in the DC Universe. He's a great member of the Justice League of America growing up. I was glad to see Meltzer brought him back, and I want to see more. Great job by Kevin Van Hook and the whole creative team on a fun Spotlight mini that was produced to tell a really solid Red Tornado story. I liked this one a lot. And it was notable for me because how cool.
It was definitely I really enjoyed reading it. He's the character that I'm kind of sad to see that he's not going to be in the new team.
But I hope we do see him at some point.
Yeah, he's got a feel to it, and he has a place on the JLA, and I want to see more, more stuff like this where it is his exploration of his humanity.
Kind of Congarilla is fitting, I think, his spot right now. Right. If that would make sense. So, I mean, that's Congarilla kind of is that kind of character where he's kind of that quirky character that fits in there. But I really dug this. I'm going to talk about Dead Romeo.
Oh, okay.
Jesse Blaze Snyder, Ryan Benjamin, Salem Crawford. Very fun action horror romp. And I emphasize action horror romp. Vampires, action, love story, written and drawn in a way that reads like a classic action film. It moved quick. Plus, it featured a very cool dog, which I think is a requirement of a good action movie. This felt like a Wildstorm mini, and I don't mean that in any way as anything other than I love Wildstorm minis because they usually feel like a good film to sit and watch with a group of friends. It's the hero you root for, the love interest that you want him to be with. Plenty of danger and fighting. It was just fun. We talked a lot about some of those very cool buddy, action Wildstorm minis that we were really digging. And this felt like that. It had that vibe, and that's nothing but a compliment because I think it's hard to do cool action romps that feel like, a good Schwarzenegger and Stallone film, the classic ones. We grew up with that stuff. And I mean, this felt like that and with a horror twist. Mm-hmm. And it just moved and cooked and, there's something. It had a groove. It did have a groove to it. A lot of what I'm enjoying about Human Target right now I'm digging with this, and just with a horror vibe. JSA versus Cobra. Troutman again. fantastic art with colors by friend of the show, Art Lyon. It showed the inner turmoil the inner turmoil of the JSA that mirrored the upcoming split in the main book, at least the upcoming split at that time. I like that the difference in leadership styles between Terrific and Power Girl were examined. I love that Terrific's checkmate past has him operate in a way that's different from that of Power Girl's approach. I think this is normal for any team, and it's a fantastic use of the creepy revamped Cobra from Faces of Evil. Gene Ha on the covers. I'm a huge fan of the work of Gene Ha. I was lucky enough to have him do a Jack Knight Starman commission for me at a recent convention. It just is a good, fun, great, dark story. Cobra, creepy as can be. And
yeah, I really dig this one. And it's kind of like the villains kind of won this. In the end, they
sort of, yeah.
You know, it's weird. I give them the victory, over JSA on this one because it furthered their agenda. It furthered where they want to be. Now, it wasn't a perfect ending for them, but they're still just as strong as they were, if not stronger than before. And their now presence, because you think about a terrorist organization, they want people to be afraid of them. They want to instill that fear. They want to be able to disrupt life and normal harmony that anyone goes through. Cobra, through this, instilled that fear. They, really, they're now a presence and a name once again. They're no longer considered a C-list terrorist cell. They are, public enemy number one type deals where they have some serious mojo backing them. So that was something I really like seeing that, and I'm confident we're going to see Cobra again, probably in JSA title, maybe in All Stars. I'm not sure where, but we're definitely,
or maybe throughout the DC
or
universe,
throughout the DCU. Who knows? But they're definitely back, and we're going to see them again.
It was really interesting to me because they were genuinely creepy. And one of the things that worked was the narrative from the leader of Cobra. And going, especially when he went up against Terrific, where Terrific was doing his own inner dialogue as well and seeing the two of them kind of just trying to outthink and outsmart each other. And the frustrations of Terrific. It really worked for me. It was a very dynamic piece. It was beautiful and it was edgy, and I liked it. It was a great mini. If you're a JSA fan and you missed this JSA versus Cobra miniseries, do yourself a favor because it's one of the better JSA stories that was published. And it was, it fits into the whole JSA vibe that's going on this year. JSA's cool. So cool. I got two more that I want to discuss. Great 10, number 1. I'm a big fan of bringing new lore into the DC Universe, and the accomplished perfect physician origin from issue 1 remains my favorite. Tony Bedard has crafted an interesting mini, here with each issue having a contained origin, mixed in with a larger overarching story where the Great 10 deals with the fact that they come from very different political and religious backgrounds that cause them to conflict and mistrust each other. Will this team pull it together at the end? Will they lose members who did not match the overall philosophy? Where are they going to go from here? I love that we're bringing in new villains that have something to do with their lore, and it's a great, interesting series, another Bedard home run, and it's a good-looking book, and I'm digging this one.
Oh, definitely, dude. This is a nice series that's developing. You mentioned this, the cultural differences, the complexities of the Chinese culture. I love seeing how this team is so fundamentally different than than American superheroes or even the British superheroes. They've shown a couple of them, not as many as I kind of like to see an international book that goes through the different regions and the different types of heroes. But this is one of those. I was like, I picked it up, and I'm glad it's every issue's going through. I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of neat. Yeah, and
I like how each of the 10 issues is a spotlight. But there's an overarching tale that is just as interesting as the spotlight. That to me is it's an interesting balance, and Bedard's doing a great job with that. It's just a different kind of storytelling, and I dig it. My last one's an honorable mention. I want to talk about Strange Adventures. Starlin. I will admit that the change from Hawkman to Bizarro in the Aberrant 7 threw me off, but I gotta give Starlin credit for changing gears. I'm assuming the change obviously came due to Blackest Night, and I get it. I'm sad because I was looking forward to a Starlin Hawkman series. The truth is I'm looking forward to any Hawkman series, so the fact that there's no news of any kind of Hawkman series right now has me, come on, please, I'm lynching onto Ray Palmer saying that he's going to save them. It's who needs to save them? Ryan Choi. Ryan Choi wouldn't talk about it. He'd just do it.
Him and the
Ray
big
Palmer
giant
sitting
head.
around saying, "Hey, come on, help me out, Indigo Lady," and all that stuff. Ryan Choi would get in there with his, the table of guys. I forget their name now.
Yeah, his little brain trust.
The brain trust, yeah.
Is with the big giant head, helping him out.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'd take the big giant head and go. It's just gonna drive me. I'm gonna go back and read some Ryan Choi now that I can't remember the name of the doggone table of people. Because those guys were awesome.
Yeah.
But his whole crew would go in there and they'd take care of it, and we'd have Hawkman back already. So let's get Ryan Choi on this whole thing and bring him back. All right, back to, Strange Adventures. This wasn't my favorite of the three. We've had these, the multiple miniseries we've had from Starlin. But I enjoyed this one. Sinar and the Weird switch bodies due to the last series, and this leads to some interesting issues with the Weird trying to deal with the change. I'm guessing we aren't getting more of these due to the Strange and Comet joining the Rebels book.
Yeah.
But I had a blast with these. Starlin is a master of the cosmic. Like I said, this wasn't the strongest of the three, but I still found a great deal to enjoy here. I wish we had some news of Starlin doing something else, because I enjoyed him over at DC. I thought he was kind of cool there. I liked what he was doing. I thought this cosmic stuff was kind of cool. I thought there was room to have this going on with Rebels and all that other stuff, so I don't know. But that's kind of my honorable mention, because I want to talk about that. That's, for minis. Woo. It's a big year. I didn't go through every mini that was released this year. I just want to grab some notable ones that kind of stuck out for me. And there was so much good this year.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Want to shout out the Summit City Comic Con, which is May 22nd, 2010. That's over at summitcitycomiccon.com. There's a handy link in the show notes. Those are put on by our friends over at instocktrades.com and dcbservice.com. Also, C2E2, the convention in Chicago, April 16th to the 18th, 2010. Jim and I are going to be there. We are very excited to be a part of the C2E2 convention, so if you're going to be there, let us know. And it looks like it's going to be two great conventions that are going to be coming up that we're going to be enjoying, so please be sure to check out both of them. Our sponsors for this episode are dcbservice.com and instocktrades.com. Remember, Billy Batson, the Magic of Shazam trade paperback, issues 1 through 6, $12.99. 50% off, only $6.49. You cannot beat that deal. Over at InStockTrades.com, JLA Avengers trade paperback, episode 199, regularly $19.99, 47% off, only $10.59. Kurt Busiek, George Perez, DC, Marvel, Raging Bullets. We're going to be talking about it soon. Episode 199. Oh, you got to share this story. You're sitting here telling me this whole thing, and I think as long as we're wrapping up the episode here, you got to share this story. We're talking about your little spoiler opening and all that stuff.
This is Jesus Christ Superstar, and I had a longer version of it, because if you ever heard that bit where I kind of get a little bit funky with we go in depth the plot lines, that's actually a longer section between the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff, and I was trying to match it.
So you took a little artistic license?
I tried to match it too well with Michael Jackson.
I can't believe I just said artistic.
Yes. With my problem I did with Michael Jackson Thriller, I tried to match it too much, and it really lost it, because I don't sing at all like him, so you lost it. So I wanted to keep it a little bit shorter.
I wanted you to beat it.
I thought you were going to say, I want you to whip it.
Yeah, no. That's
along,
Devo, yeah.
You must whip it.
Well, that does fit your Watish almost.
Yes.
Yeah. When a problem comes along, just Watish. Not quite. I mean, it's on the fly. It's a little work, but you could do that to Devo.
Easily.
Oh, you're a sick man. Although, then again, how many hours I spent preparing for this, too. I hope you guys enjoyed this first part of this one. It's something we really went back. I went back through every title I could. And I still at this point feel like I wish I had gone through more. There's still more discussion that you and I have prepared to continue on for the next part of this. But I'm still like, geez, there was so much good to talk about in 2009. I wanted to give top lists, but at the same time I wanted to note what was great about a lot of comics that I think that you don't get to unless you're talking to your top fives. And I think they're great books still. So I'm hoping that this kind of gave that vibe of celebrating comics. Please make this, it's not about whether you agree or disagree with the list, because you and I had very different approaches and very different lists. Make this about a celebration of what you liked in comics. If you disagree, instead of worrying about disagreeing, in the episode threads, get out there and broadcast what you loved. You know, what's great about comics right now? What comics are really giving you that vibe right now? And let's celebrate those. Point people to them. Books are dropping right now that shouldn't be. And if you're reading a book that you're like, guys, this should have been in your top 5, is great, tell people about it. Tell them about it on our forum. Tell them all over the internet. Get out there and brag about it. We spend so much time trying to dispute each other when somebody likes something and you're just kind of like going, let's nail that. I got news for you. I worked so hard on this list, you're not going to sell me. Jim worked so hard on his list, you're not going to sell me that I'm wrong. It's right for me. It's right for him. We can debate about it till we're blue in the face, and that's cool, and we can certainly do that. Bring it on. That's fun. But balance that out, please, with getting out there and shouting out the comics you love. Because I am sick and tired of comics that are great being canceled. And that's why I did my top lists, but I wanted to go through every single book. I took to heart your passing comment you did in a phone conversation, which was a cool idea and something, your actual original plan, I do think we are going to do in the future. But I did take elements of your original plan and use it as part of this, because I thought, the more I thought about it, I'm like, this is a cool idea and a cool way to honor the great things about those books. It's the reason why for each book I picked out an issue, each book that I picked out an issue that I really liked, that I wanted to note, because I want to get out there and tell people about why these books are interesting and entertaining. So this was kind of like a Speeding Bullets extreme or something. I don't know what we did here. But yet at the same time, we categorized and honored things too, and we will continue doing that on our next show. So we will be back at the end of the week at some point. Please take a look at the website. And hopefully you're liking the new website. It's a work in progress, a major work in progress. I'm putting links back up. There's still links to the old website. But if there's something of yours that's missing, if there's something that, you want me to link to it on that, just shoot me an email at ragingbullets@gmail.com. Please remember our show voicemail line. That's 1-440-388-4434. Or Dr. Norge on Skype. That's also available on our website. You can click on that, and you can find those from our website as well in the About Us section. But we love having you a part of our show. We'll do some, on the second part of this, we'll do some voicemails as well if there's anything that's not saved for 200. I know we've gotten some voicemails already for our 200th episode, which is coming up. We're deliberately doing some of these multi-part shows because there's things we want to get in before we hit 200, but it's also because secretly Jim said, if we keep doing these multi-part spits, 200 will be our
4-year anniversary
show. So 200 is going to be our 4-year anniversary show.
So there's a reason behind the part A, part B, and maybe part C.
Well, we're so close to our 4-year anniversary that I think it's appropriate that it'll get there. This way we get in our books of the month. We're going to finish up Preacher. We're going to finish up JLA Avengers. We're going to finish up a lot of new comics and things that you and I both want to talk about before we get to 200. And 200 will be the celebration of our 4-year anniversary in March. So there is a method to this madness that we do. So I just think it's cool as can be that our 200th show falls plop right around our 4-year anniversary. Yes. So that is going to be our 4-year anniversary show. So there is a method to this lunacy. So we will see you in a few days.
Bye.